Kurama thoughts. Naruto growls in annoyance. His breath is a bit haggard as Sakura applies healing chakra to his arm, which is severely burned, and Kurama was doing his best to keep him alive from exhaustion. Kyuso, her defenses are even better than Gaara's. I'm also pretty low on chakra. Sasuke, we need to end this quickly. You distract her, and I will touch her with my seal. You touch her with yours after, okay? Naruto whispered, occasionally glancing at Kaguya as she stood stoically there, waiting for Naruto and Sasuke's next move. Sasuke hated to admit it, but he was also on his last legs too. Keeping aloft with his Susanoo was hard, but it was better than falling into the lava of this dimension. All right, let's go, Sasuke said as he started flying to the side, but slowly getting closer to Kaguya, drawing her attention from Naruto to him. But he silently cursed himself as he realized this may be a moot plan, given her apparent Byakugan. Naruto had adopted the jutsu Madara had used after Kurama had broken it down to him after seeing it for a few times. It was a non-elemental based jutsu, but it required a lot of chakra as trade-off. Limbo, Naruto thought to himself, and at first he thought it had failed, but soon noticed his chakra reserves were dangerously low. Kurama had only been able to create enough for this jutsu and keep him alive, along with 5 invisible Narutos rushed out towards Kaguya. I guess this will have to do for now. Hopefully Sasuke's distraction is enough, he thought to himself, as Kaguya had her all-seeing Sharingan out. Kaguya was completely focused on Sasuke's assault at the moment, banking on being able to feel the killer intent from Naruto to block his attack. But if it was anyone else, the killing intent that Sasuke was emitting would be fatal. Nice try, but your little pin-prick attacks will do nothing to me, she said indifferently, as she quickly diffused that fireballs into nothing but fire nature chakra that left a warm breeze as it passed her. What she didn't notice was that the chakra that had flew past her had masked Naruto's Limbo's currently minimal chakra right now. So it wrapped her in a full Nelson headlock, holding tight as Kaguya flailed pointlessly. Sasuke let out a sigh of relief as he downed another soldier pill, bringing back a little of his vast Kage-level chakra reserves. He had truthfully used more chakra than was safe distracting her, but the curse mark had kept him alive. Naruto let out a sigh of relief as he lurched forward, floating as the Rakuto Sannin he was allowed, hand outstretched. Sasuke now, he exclaimed, a sun forming on the palm of his hand, the moon forming on Sasuke's hand as he flew towards Kaguya, dropping his Susanoo, switching with one of Naruto's black orbs. We did it! The dimension started to fade back to the intense godly battle-scarred land between Konohagakure no Sato and Takigakure no Sato. Though one thing was very much apparent to Naruto and Sasuke after a few moments. I wouldn't celebrate so quickly, as I am not sealed, though I must thank you for releasing me from that horrendous man's control. Is there any way I can fix this blasphemous appearance? She asked curiously, as she was currently in an Edo Tensei form, which she found blasphemous as a shrine priestess. Naruto's sweat dropped, though he was grateful that the battle had seemingly stopped, because he knew if he had to continue things as they are, there would be a high chance the only hopes to their survival was zero. Yeah, I remember a jutsu used by an enemy turned friend at one point used. He called it the Rinne Tensei, Naruto admitted, though he honestly did not know why he was helping the enemy. But something deep in his soul told him that Kaguya didn't mean them any more ill will, or she was damn perfect at acting and hiding auras. Sasuke sent Naruto a shut up or I kill you dope. Look, but something told him that they were no longer in danger as well. Naruto, I'd be careful about telling her about such deadly techniques. He trailed warily. Kaguya looked a bit annoyed that he didn't believe that she wasn't going to attack them anymore, but she couldn't fault them for being precautious of her, given all the havoc she had wrought since she was brought back from the dead. Why, thank you. Itu, I do not know your name. She trailed lightly, as she only knew him by the name she herself had given him, the child of prophecy. Naruto gained one of his foxish grins on his, and he dropped his golden Kurama cloak much to Sasuke's annoyance. Though after a few moments of Naruto still not being attacked, Sasuke dropped his perfect Susanoo as well. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. After this, I will be the Kaguya of Konohagakure no Sato. He exclaimed lightly, giving her the Mato Guy-approved thumbs up of youth. Somewhere else on the battlefield. Lee, somewhere I can feel someone's flames of youth burning brightly. He exclaimed as he pulled his teeth from Karen's arm. Much to Guy's dismay and arguments about how leaving bite marks was unyouthful and all that, he had taken Karen's help. It was slowly regenerating his skin, but at the level he had broken his legs, it would kill Karen to try and regenerate, meaning he would never walk again without aid. Back with the trio, Kaguya smiled at this. Then her eyes widened a bit as a blush crossed her face. Naruto's torso had been exposed because his shirt was little more than tatters at the moment. My, he would make a wonderful mate. I haven't felt the touch of man in a few millennia. She is still a human woman after all, she thought to herself as she admired Naruto's body as discreetly as possible, but this didn't go unnoticed by the wandering Nin that was Sasuke. Sasuke noticed her eyeing Naruto, but the blush on her face threw him off. He, unlike his counterpart, was painfully aware of things of the opposite gender. He had spurned many beautiful women's advances as to not get them involved into his descent into bloodlust or domination plans. Contrary to popular belief, he had a heart, so he slowly slid his katana back into the scabbard as the lightning nature chakra disappeared as well. Kaguya thought for a moment and realized she could use the aforementioned technique as well. The Rinnegan part of her Sharingan pulsed, and the statue Nagato had used to revive the Leaf Village appeared beside her. I shall return momentarily, she said, stepping into the statue's mouth, disappearing as the mouth closed. Naruto looked to Sasuke, who also shared his confused look as to why she was no longer attacking them. But both were thankful that the fighting seemed to be over as the jaw slowly lowered, revealing a still white-haired woman. But now it was slightly darker, more silver than pure white. Her eyes still a pale lavender as seen on the Hyuga, and she was now wearing a red-bottomed, white-topped shrine priestess outfit. Think Kikyo from Inuyasha. Sasuke's eyes narrowed at her, drawing his katana swiftly, charging lightning chakra into it, gaining a defensive stance. Kaguya noticed Sasuke's returned animosity towards her, but waved it off as she cleared her throat, garnering their full attention to her. First off, I'm guessing you guys are wondering why I am not wiping the floor with your weakened forms, correct? Kaguya said, intentionally making a jab at the Uchiha's pride. When he looked annoyed at her, she laughed lightly and waved him off. When you're a goddess incarnate, you can even wave off the annoyance of an angry Uchiha. Kaguya loved this part about it. Naruto laughed at Sasuke's annoyance too, because at least he could admit there was almost no chance in hell of them winning against her. But he still had Kurama and all the other tails creating as much chakra as they could just in case. More importantly, how did only Madara's influence on you as an Edo Tensei get sealed, but not you yourself? Naruto asked curiously. When it came to women, he was a complete dunce, but otherwise he was on the battle tactics and analyzation of a Nara. Kaguya returned her sight back towards Naruto and smiled, weirding Naruto out a bit. He is very perceptive. He will make a great mate. Kaguya thought to herself and nodded at Naruto's question. That is easy to tell. It's because it was created by the Shrine Priestess, used to seal demons that used to roam the countryside before the time of ninjas. I cannot directly stop at Purse, but I can redirect it, though I couldn't in the Edo form under Madara's control. So there is only one person that could have done that. She trailed lightly and looked to her right as an ethereal form of Hagoromo Itsuki appeared next to her. Hagoromo nodded with a sly smile as she says, "It is true, my mother was unable to change the direction of the seal, but I did. The fact that you two are still alive proves my theory," Hagoromo said, looking towards his mother with a smile. After being sealed in the moon for so long, even her soul couldn't leave. It seems the insanity from her consuming the forbidden fruit eventually wore off, Hagoromo said, causing Naruto and Sasuke to sweat dropped at this. Hagoromo had risked their lives and the lives of the world on a gamble. Even Tsunade is not much of a gambler compared to this enigma. Sasuke recovered first from his stupor and straightened up a bit. So, you're telling me that your mother is now sane? Or as sane as she can be? Sasuke asked curiously, his hand never leaving his katana. He was physically exhausted, but his chakra had recovered to about a third of its normal levels. Naruto smacked Sasuke upside the back of his head at the last comment. Hey, that was rude, man. Be thankful that she didn't even want anything in return for us conspiring against Dash. Naruto was about to finish when he was interrupted by Kaguya clearing her throat, garnering the attention of all the males present. I never said I didn't want anything, she trailed, blushing a little, looking at Naruto with a smile. To trade for the restoration and release of everyone present, I want you, Naruto, as my mate, she said, causing everyone, including her son, the famous Rakuto Sannin, to have their eyes widen at her demand. Hagoromo looked baffled at this. He had to admit, Naruto controlled his sage powers rather well, but the prospect of having someone so young as his father was a no-go with him. But mother, he is but a child, he exclaimed, causing Naruto grow a tick mark on his forehead. Limbo. 3 more Naruto shadows appeared and pounced on the ethereal Hagoromo. The shadows had shifted to the same plane as Hagoromo. Take that back. I'm 19 now, he exclaimed in indignation before his shadows were pried off of her son by Kaguya. Sasuke was still shocked at this sudden revelation, but soon recovered. This dobe is going to be married to a literal goddess amongst humans? It should be me, the all-powerful Uchiha, Sasuke exclaimed in annoyance. I had to insert some Sasuke bashing in somewhere. He is a thorn in my side in the series. Before Sasuke could even blink, Kaguya had seamlessly glided over to Sasuke and cracked him over the head with a fist. It's my choice, and I don't want some stuck-up snob to be married to me for all eternity. Dada bake, she exclaimed, her hair standing up like a certain red-hot habanero we all know and love. The nearby area had filled with a dangerous amount of ki aimed at Sasuke, courtesy of Kaguya. Naruto bursted into laughter at this, diffusing the situation almost immediately. Sasuke sat rubbing his head, now as Naruto recovered from his bout of laughter. You sound just like my cousin. I used to hate my verbal tick, but my mom made me love it. It's cute, and it seems you have a similar one, Naruto said as he wiped a tear from laughing so hard from his eye and stood back up. Hagoromo had let himself snicker a little bit. It really was funny to see his mother get like this. And it wasn't aimed at him or his brother, seeing her suddenly break from her normally stoic expressions. It's good to see you back to normal, Mom. Oh well. It seems my time here is gone. Take care of my mom now, okay, Dad? Hagoromo asked, leaving one last jab at the blonde-haired knucklehead ninja. Sakura had walked up as she had tended to all the people she could and was currently recovering her chakra to tend to the next wave of injured. Did he just call Naruto father? She asked, causing all eyes to turn to her, causing Naruto to sigh, but nod in affirmation at her observation. Naruto had almost forgotten about her request to trade for his hand in marriage, for the lives of all the remaining ninja and their release from the Tsuki no Mai. Oh yeah, Kaguya-chan, I agree to your terms. Please release and bring back the fallen, Naruto intoned, his voice laced with conviction as to what he had to do to save his loved ones. One of his mottos was to protect those he cared about, and he cared about all of the Alliance. Kaguya nodded at this, and her third eye pulsed once more. The statue that hadn't left her side now released all the recently deceased souls back into their bodies, regenerating them enough to live. Her third eye slowly began to close, as the moon's blood-red color began to fade. The pods along the trees started to open as Tree slowly began retracting itself into the ground, causing the asleep ninja to lay safely on the ground. I see your conviction to your principles is as hard as steel, so you will make a fine Naruto-kun, she said with a soft smile, causing Naruto to blush as the third eye fully closed. Her horns also retracted into her forehead, making her look more human than anything else right now. Sakura's eyes widened at what Kaguya said, and the lines started connecting to what she overheard. What? You're marrying her? Didn't she try to kill you? Sakura exclaimed incredulously, causing the present party to cover their ears as at the sheer volume that this pink-haired woman could produce. Naruto nodded solemnly, but smiled soon after. It's all right, Sakura-chan. She reminded me a lot of my mom and Hinata combined, so I'm sure we'll be fine, Naruto admitted, and explained what had happened while she was gone, causing Sakura to nod in acknowledgement as to what had went down. Sasuke saw the look in her eyes. She didn't want to see her friend go down this path. Maybe out of slight jealousy, she hadn't been entirely lying when she told Naruto she loved him, just not the way he had wanted in the past. It's okay, Sakura, though there is a little something we have to settle before things are officially done. You recover faster than I do, so I know you're ready for this. Sasuke trailed as he looked at the only man he had ever considered truly a friend. Naruto nodded as well, and they took to the air, flying towards what was left of the Shimatsu no Tani after their last encounter. Yeah, let's finish this. It's still 2-2 after all, Naruto exclaimed, gaining his foxish grin, giving Sasuke the Mato guy approved thumbs-up of youth as they flew towards the Shimatsu no Tani. Sasuke was the first to arrive, dropping his Susanoo. He wanted to fight Naruto. No avatars for now. Look what I still have, Sasuke said, reaching into his cloak, pulling out his old, scratched forehead protector. He held up a hand to Naruto to ask him to wait a few moments. Sasuke charged lightning into a kunai, essentially electroplating the headband with his kunai, making it darker, the scratch and the leaf symbol disappearing. Once that was finished, he carved the Konohagakure symbol into it and donned his headband once again, sending Naruto his own version of the foxish grin that Naruto loved and cherished so much. A wave of nostalgia passed over Naruto as flashbacks of when they were kids popped into his head, though some things were vastly different. The hatred towards Naruto and his brother was no longer there. In its place was the slightly out of place, a look that Naruto hadn't truly seen in years. Happiness. Happiness that he was going to spar with someone he considered a friend. Come on, I won't hold back just because you look like something Tora dragged in, Naruto exclaimed lightly, causing Sasuke to gain a tick mark at two things: Naruto's jab at him and a mention of that demonic cat they had to capture so many times. Sasuke's hand went up to scar he still had along his jawline from the time he had captured Tora. After that, he let Naruto capture him. Because of the Kyuubi, he didn't scar up at all, much to Naruto's dismay. You look like you normally do after Tora gets her claws into you, Sasuke said with a smirk, causing Naruto to gain a tick mark on his forehead too. He had actually been hospitalized one time by that damned cat. Naruto clenched his fist for a second, then let it relax as he felt laughter bubbling up inside of him. Why did he feel this way? Because he was cracking jokes with a man who seemed to have gone to the darkest part of himself and seemed impossible to recover, but now this was proven wrong. He snickered a little bit, barely able to contain his laughter. So did Sasuke. Soon they were both in a fit of laughter. Sasuke's laughter was natural and didn't sound forced, nor did it sound like the time when he attempted to kill Sakura. Naruto was the first to recover, clutching his sides as they hurt from laughing so hard. I'm glad I'm able to crack a joke or two with you like in the past, Naruto said with a genuine smile, beaming at Sasuke. Sasuke nodded, a light but genuine smile crossed his face. You ready to lose worse than Real Madrid did? Naruto gained a tick mark on his forehead at this quip. You ready to lose like Brazil did to Germany? He asked, causing Sasuke to chuckle at this. Naruto drew a kunai as Sasuke drew his katana, not coating it in lightning chakra, because this time he didn't want to kill Naruto. It was a spar for old time's sake. Sasuke then disappeared from sight, causing Naruto's eyes to widen, but soon realized where his rival was as the air behind him suddenly shifted. Naruto's other black orbs that remained after Sasuke switched with one of them quickly shifted into defensive mode, blocking the kick that would have hit Naruto. Not immediate. Seems this would be like the fight with Gaara back during the Chunin exams. Sasuke mused out loud, and Naruto nodded. Naruto smirked as Sasuke let his guard down to quickly retreat from the reach of his black orbs, but failed to notice the one bolting for him. Gotcha! Naruto exclaimed as the ball went hurtling into what he thought was Sasuke, but had to cover his eyes as wood chips went flying at him. I haven't seen the Kawarimi no Jutsu since our academy days, Naruto said with a nostalgic look on his face, but it quickly disappeared as Sasuke appeared in front of him, causing Naruto to go on the defensive as they engaged in a taijutsu battle. Their weapons long since forgotten as they engaged in a deadly dance of power and skill. Sasuke kept pounding down on Naruto's defense, silently thanking the fact Naruto had left his orbs on standby as they had their test of will and power through their exchanged blows. Looks like you're a lot better than last time, Sasuke said with a chuckle, finally breaking through Naruto's defenses, planting a firm kick to Naruto's chest, causing him to skid back a few feet. Nothing too serious, enough to show he meant business though. Naruto rubbed his chest lightly, then smirked. During their fray, Naruto had managed to get his variation of the Hiraishin symbol on Sasuke without him noticing, so he appeared in front of Sasuke with a golden flash, startling the last Uchiha a bit, sending him on the defensive end this time. You're no pushover yourself, Naruto commented truthfully. Last time they were here, he just wanted to land a scratch on Sasuke, but this time he wanted to land a full blow on Sasuke. As they battled nail to tooth, they both vented out their anger, frustration, and rage in the only effective way they knew how, wailing on each other. Sasuke was starting to sweat under the onslaught of Naruto's flurry of blows. During their trading of blows, Naruto had managed to form the hand signs for his signature move, the Kagebushin no Jutsu. Now he was facing down two Narutos instead of just one. Damn it, this dope really isn't playing around. If I don't cut the bullshit out, I will really lose, Sasuke thought frantically to himself. As he leapt back several feet, it'd only have him enough time to finish the hand signs of the first stage of Chidori, as Naruto had used the time to have the clone help him finish molding a Rasengan. Just like old times, huh? Sasuke asked, facing his palm parallel to the ground as the sound of 1,000 chirping birds and a mini tornado entered the air. Naruto nodded and activated the Hiraishin seal again, thinking he would appear in front of Sasuke. But when he arrived, Sasuke was no longer in front of him. Where did the team go? Naruto thought to himself. The familiar sound of entered his ears, signaling Sasuke was behind him. Sasuke was snickering. Why was he snickering? It dawned on him that they both decided to go on the offensive by teleporting closer to the other. But since they both had the same idea, they only had taken each other's places. He had to admit that was pretty funny, letting out a few chuckles. Wow, that's what we call a major fail, huh? Naruto admitted, never dropping his Rasengan, Sasuke returning in kind by keeping his Chidori up as well. Sasuke nodded, and this time opted to just run at Naruto, which the blonde also did, flying at his rival with breakneck speeds. Both intent on ending this match with this one blow. Time to end this, Sasuke exclaimed, outstretching his hand towards Naruto, which he mirrored. Rasengan. Chidori. The familiar dark gray bubble as their jutsus collided appeared, joining them in one of the strongest techniques known to man or god. Talk no jutsu. Naruto stood up from his kneeling position and looked at Sasuke with cool and collected eyes, matching Sasuke's. Remember the last time we were here? Last time we were here, you had nearly killed Karen and attacked Sakura, even as I begged you to just come back to the village while you still could back then. Naruto admitted truthfully, causing Sasuke to flinch lightly at the words. I truthfully hated you for so long. You abandoned me and your friends. You were one of my few friends back then. Sasuke's breath hitched at this revelation, his eyes widening a bit as well. The dope actually hated me? That's a strong word for someone as kind-hearted as him. Sasuke thought to himself, taking Naruto's words to heart, as this was something not to be taken lightly coming from the #1 knucklehead ninja. I actually hated you for a long time. Until recently, I still hated you. I held so tightly to the belief that you made me weak with your ideals. Up until the fight with Kaguya, I saw those ideals are what make you truly strong. Naruto smirked a bit at this, but inside he was a bit hurt that Sasuke had actually hated him until recently. Well, I can't become Hokage if I'm weak, can I? Databeo, Naruto exclaimed lightly, pumping his fist into the air, causing Sasuke to chuckle at his openness. It was a truly nice sight for change for the Uchiha. Sasuke shook his head a bit as he chuckled. This knucklehead still hasn't changed a bit, but I wouldn't have it any other way for my friend. Sasuke thought to himself, shocking himself as he so easily thought of Naruto as a friend, not just a rival or a nuisance that was getting in his way. Yeah, you can't, and I can't call some weakling my friend, can I? Sasuke asked curiously, raising an eyebrow to Naruto. Naruto's smile brightened to a seemingly unbelievable amount. Sasuke had only ever once called Naruto his friend, so this was a very special occasion for the both of them. You know, I honestly think things can go back to the way they used to be now, no? Even better than they used to be. When I become Hokage, you will be my advisor, Naruto exclaimed lightly, causing Sasuke's eyebrow to twitch lightly at this. Sasuke's eyes were now covered by his bangs, and a dark aura surrounded him for a second. I still plan on becoming the Hokage. Not for the same dark reason, but don't count me out yet, he exclaimed in light annoyance at Naruto's proclamation before calming down a few moments later. Though when I become Hokage, you will be my advisor. How does that sound? Be happy, Sasuke said with a fake haughty attitude. He honestly wanted Naruto to be his right-hand man if he became Hokage. Naruto was a great ninja. He also held the aptitude for being a great advisor on various subjects that may come up with training. Naruto's bangs now covered his bangs, mirroring Sasuke's earlier look. You know you'll become Hokage over my dead body. Not even then, Naruto exclaimed lightly, looking back at his best friend and long-term rival. The white area surrounding them slowly faded as it gave way to a now rain-filled final valley, where they stood in a now sizable crater, one of the few lone islands at the bottom of the waterfall. Sasuke rolled his eyes in joking mock of Naruto's statement. I don't believe words, only actions, though I do believe you have won this match, Sasuke simply stated, falling backwards due to chakra exhaustion and just plain exhaustion from their earlier battle with Naruto's soon-to-be wife. Naruto gained a smirk on his face, then suddenly exhaustion hit him like a ton of bricks. He also hit the ground. Damn, that was an intense match. I barely was able to keep you from passing out due to exhaustion. The only thing holding up your pal over there was pure will and what chakra he had left. Naruto chuckled lightly at this, wincing in pain as he realized the kick Sasuke left earlier had probably cracked his chest bone a bit, but Kurama was currently almost finished healing this along with other broken bones. Thanks, Kurama. I owe you for this one, Naruto commented, and Kurama nodded at this. Damn right you do, Kurama exclaimed lightly, cutting the link between the two. Even though Kurama had made that rude comment, he knew that Kurama still cared about him. Otherwise, he'd be dead by now. Sasuke managed to sit up, placing his right arm on his knee, and looked at the splayed out on the ground, chuckling a bit at this sight. With the way it seems now, you'd swear I had won, but that was a great match. I haven't felt this stress-free since our last match on a rooftop all those years back, Sasuke commented with a wistful tone to his voice, the remorse for his past actions apparent in his voice. Both Naruto and Sasuke noticed the rest of Team 7's presence before they heard Sakura. Hey Sasuke, Naruto, are you guys okay? She exclaimed to be heard over the waterfall, climbing down the wall towards them. Sasuke and Naruto chuckled at their sometimes overprotective pink-haired teammate, and Naruto sat up, sitting cross-legged. Yeah, we're fine. A few good bumps or bruises, that's all, Naruto called back with a wave to the pink-haired woman as she approached them. Their collective thoughts were, oh shit, as Sakura approached them with her bangs covering her eyes, with both fists cocked back in a baka punch. Sasuke tried to move, but his body didn't respond as a reaction to his exhaustion, and the killer intent Sakura was leaking From what he could tell, Naruto wasn't doing much better. Sakura-chan. Sasuke trailed lightly, causing Sakura to pause lightly. It had been years since he had called her that. It had caught her off guard. Sakura shook this off and returned to glaring at the two. What are you two idiots doing? After a fight like that, you guys should be resting, not duking it out like the Raikage and B. Sakura exclaimed as she clocked the frozen men over the head with a chakra-enhanced Baka punch at their oversight. Naruto was the first to dig himself from the Naruto-sized hole that Sakura had helped him create. I, God, Sakura-chan, were you trying to kill us? Naruto asked as he rubbed the top of his head. Sasuke pulled himself from his hole as well and sighed, nodding at Naruto's comment. I could swear I saw the Shinigami for a minute. Sasuke trailed a bit, rubbing the spot where she had hit. Kakashi finally walked up after taking his sweet time, placing a hand on Sakura's head, stopping another blow to her other teammates' heads. Ma, it's not time for this right now. It's time for us to celebrate, Kakashi said, smiling at his team. I think this more than warrants a party, don't you think? Kakashi asked lightly, giving Naruto a knowing wink. Sakura had informed him of how they had won the war on the way there. Naruto sighed a bit at this. Kakashi knowing right away was bad. He had seen his sensei writing in a book about the size of Jiraiya's Ikka series books, meaning he was probably going to continue the Sannin series himself. Now he had something he could base it on, aside from the normal plot that was seen in erotic novels. Yeah, it is time for a well-deserved dip in a hot spring and a party, Naruto exclaimed lightly, causing everyone to chuckle at his antics. But they had to admit that sounded like paradise right now. 3 hours later, back in the Leaf Village, it had been barely touched by the Jubi's Bijou Blast, that had spread as far as the eye could see, which surprised Team 7 as they got back, but now there was a sizable dent in their gate. Not only that, but about the size of Kurama, with his tails spread, part of the forest was now gone. Man, that sure was tiring, though I am thankful for this hot spring that the Jubi Blast had unearthed, and for Yamato building something around it. Naruto thought as he laid his head back against the ground as he relaxed into the water, letting all of his tension and worries melt away from him. Sasuke lounged across from him in the water and nodded in affirmation at this. Nothing is better than taking a long, hot soak after fighting 2 gods in one day, Sasuke said with a chuckle. Then they heard the sliding door that lead to the hot springs open again, which was odd, because Kakashi had fallen asleep right in between the 2 males, and Sakura was just beyond the divider that Yamato had installed. Along with, they had reserved the hot springs for at least an hour for their enjoyment. It's not a big one like in most anime. Naruto looked over his shoulder, and his eyes widened along with his jaw dropping. Before him was a barely clothed at all Kaguya, wearing nothing but a towel around her sizable assets, bigger than Sakura, but smaller than Hinata. Kaguya-chan, Naruto exclaimed, pinching his nose to stop the nosebleed that was now trying to break free. Sasuke's head snapped up, and so did Kakashi's at the mention of Naruto's fiancée. What are you doing here? This is a male-only section of the hot springs, Sasuke said, keeping his cool. He was still wary of the silver-haired woman, but it didn't show in his expressions or voice. Kakashi grabbed his little blue book from his bag and started writing something in it, muttering something about new book material before a water ball appeared above his head, drenching his upper half in water, including his precious new book material little blue book. No, Kakashi dramatically exclaimed. Kaguya giggled a little bit at Kakashi's dismay, and the little prank she had just pulled, she didn't mind too much for perverts like Kakashi, 'cause secretly she was a closet pervert. Though that didn't mean she wanted to be the next leading female role in that perverted book of his. Well, I want to bathe with my fiancé. I don't see you guys outright rejecting the idea, she said with a knowing smirk. They may have hit it well to most, but she could feel the other 2 males eyeing her body in jealousy of Naruto. Naruto had finally managed to stop his nosebleed when Kaguya had gotten into the water, causing her decently sized breasts to float playfully on the top of the water. causing Naruto to mentally curse, muttering something about "this woman will be the death of me." As he tilted his head back, Sasuke nodded. He had to admit, she looked good, but there was only one woman he would truthfully react like Naruto did to her for. "Well, I see no problem with letting you stay. After all, this is our hot springs for the next hour," earning him a glare from his yellow-haired counterpart. Kakashi gave Sasuke an eye smile and looked back to Naruto, who was looking at him with hopeful eyes, but only to be dashed by the openly perverted sensei of theirs. "If he's fine with it, then I am too," Kakashi said, truthfully, much to Naruto's dismay. This was a good learning experience for the womanly, inept kid. Naruto grumbled at this, but he had to admit he had a beautiful woman next to him. She was a downright bombshell in his eyes, so he wasn't too torn up about the unanimous decision. "Well, since we're here together, I'm going to have to figure out how to get you into the village without everyone immediately wanting your head on a platter, or worse," Naruto admitted, dropping the mood in the room a few notches. Kaguya flinched a bit at the way he worded it, but nodded as well, knowing this was a problem they would soon have to address. The civilians would be no problem, because they hadn't seen how she looked, so they would not wonder why there was a new face in the village after the alliances. Though that would mean that they would have to get the ninja to agree to at least be silent about her origins. This is true. This is quite a puzzling conundrum. We can't use a hinge, cause most ninjas can see through it pretty quickly. She threw the idea into the air, trailing a bit as she realized how quickly that plan may fail. Kakashi, the smartest one in the group, with an IQ on par with most Naras, was thinking hard about this before he came up with an idea. "Well, how about we tell the truth?" Kakashi asked, completely serious, causing everyone else to look at him as if he was dumber than a bag of rusty hammers. They all looked at him to explain further as they realized he might be onto something. Well, Kaguya did revive everyone within the 48-hour window before the soul truly leaves this world, so no one really died during the Great Ninja War. Along with the fact she wasn't actually in control when she went on a rampage, so there may be a few resentful factions, but most will be happy to have a godlike woman on their side now. Kakashi finished. Everyone nodded at this. Kakashi was right. That was the best possible plan, given the alternatives that had a chance of backfiring on all of them. Naruto had to admit this straightforward plan had a pretty good chance at success, and if he was going to be married to her, he was going to marry her, they were going to stay in his village, because her village no longer existed by normal means of the word. So the best bet was to make everyone as comfortable as possible around her. "Okay, we will go with that plan. When we go to see Obachan later to see who will succeed her as to being Hokage, we will run the plan by her, or whoever the Hokage is, and get permission to gather every ninja to hopefully get them to understand," Naruto commented, and everyone nodded at this course of action. Later that evening on the top of the Hokage Tower, Tsunade was currently wheelchair-bound, on orders of current head of the hospital, one Sakura Haruno, much to Tsunade's dismay. She was a medic too, and would have discharged herself if it hadn't been for the incessant insisting of her pink-haired student. "Quiet down, everyone," Tsunade said, projecting her voice. "As you can see, we're all alive and well. Surprisingly, no one had died during the war, though we had quite a few close calls with the critically wounded. Though thanks to the quick thinking and skill of my student, along with the medical corps, we saved them," Tsunade exclaimed lightly. The crowd burst into light applause. In the crowd were the Konoha Nine, who were intently listening to what Tsunade said, namely Naruto. He was really looking forward to seeing who the next Hokage would be. Tsunade waited for the applause to die down, and when it did, she continued. "Though I want to say, do not forget this day. Forgive those you once called enemies. They helped us in our time of need," she said lightly, the other villages present at her speech grateful at this. "As of today, I will be resigning as your Hokage and passing the will of fire onto the Rokudaime Hokage," she said, causing the crowd to grow silent at this. The ninja of the village had seen this coming for quite a while now. Tsunade was going gray a bit with the stress this job gave her. "I would now very much like to announce the Rokudaime Hokage," She paused for dramatic effect, before sending Naruto a smirk, which confused him a bit. Uzumaki Namikaze's Naruto, the hero of the Fourth Great Ninja War, she exclaimed, and the crowd, which stretched as far as the eye could see in the village, erupted with applause and congratulations. The only one not truly celebrating was a aforementioned kid. Naruto was absolutely stunned right now. He had not only pretty much single-handedly stopped the Fourth Great Ninja War, but he was now the Rokudaime Hokage. All of his friends and loved ones, minus one Kaguya for now, were around him, cheering for him and giving him hugs, which he happily but numbly returned. It was when he heard his name again did he wake from his stupor. Tsunade was motioning for him to come up there and make a speech. "Come on, kid. I'm not getting any younger," she exclaimed, causing the crowd to laugh at her comment. Naruto pretty much bolted up the side of the Hokage tower and made it to the top in no time flat. "I present you the Rokudaime Hokage," she exclaimed, sending the crowd into a happy frenzy again, taking a moment or two to calm down again. As the crowd awaited his first words since being appointed Hokage, Naruto gulped slightly, not wanting to let them down with some stupid speech. "I, Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, the Rokudaime Hokage, swear to protect you with everything in me, no matter who the enemy, foreign or domestic. I just really want to say, I love you guys. You made me into the man I am today," Naruto exclaimed. The crowd cheered at this, and even more as the Hokage cloak and hat were put onto him. They had been finished just a few moments ago. Much to Naruto's ecstaticness, the Hiyori read, "Rokudaime Hokage." It was fashioned after a mix of his father's Hokage Hiyori, along with his Sage Mode Hiyori. It was red with black flames like his father's along the bottom. "Let the will of fire burn brightly in all of you," Naruto exclaimed as he turned away from the crowd that was now partying about their excitement. Even the gloom of recent events couldn't keep them down now. Their savior, several times over now, was now their Hokage. They all knew it was his lifelong dream to become Hokage. A few minutes later in his new office, Naruto sat down in the chair he had sat down in once before for a day when he and Tsunade made the bet about if he could handle being Hokage for a day. "Wow, I'm really here, aren't I?" he mused out loud, and then Kaguya phased in from whatever dimension she had hid herself in for the time being. The Umbu hidden in the room flinched. They had by all means known who she was, even though Naruto had convinced them to at least forgive her past transgressions, which were out of control. She still scared the shit out the hardened warriors. Someone that even their Hokage couldn't defeat wasn't someone to trifle with. Kaguya smiled at Naruto and straddled him lightly, not caring that she had an audience currently. She just wanted to be close to her man. "Well, it seems you have finally achieved your goal. That deserves a reward," she said, with a devious smile on her face. "Close your eyes, Naruto-kun," Kaguya said softly. Naruto was a bit apprehensive about this, but didn't sense any malice from the woman on top of him, so he obliged. Naruto wondered what the reward was that he needed to close his eyes, but mentally shrugged it off. "Kaguya-chan," is all he could get out as he was interrupted by the feeling of something soft and supple against his lips, soon realizing it was Kaguya's lips on top of his. "Wow, so this is what a female's lips feels like. They're amazing. I could get used to this feeling," Naruto thought to himself, wrapping his arms around her waist, instinctively pulling her closer to him, softly caressing her back as their kiss deepened a bit. Much to both of their dismay, Kaguya pulled back from the kiss with a slightly drunken look on her face, though she smiled soon after, laying her head on his chest, just enjoying his heartbeat. Kurama thoughts. Naruto was splayed out on the bed, unable to sleep because in all of his years of being on this planet, he had never had someone else occupying the bed also. Along with the fact he had finally achieved his lifelong dream of becoming the Hokage, he just hadn't expected it to be so soon. "Take that too, San. I surpassed you. I became Hokage at only 19 years of age," Naruto silently thought to himself, pumping his fist softly as to not wake the sleeping Kaguya, who currently had her head on his chest, an arm draped over his chest. Kaguya was sleeping contently on Naruto, softly snoring, dreaming of various things, namely Naruto. Somewhere else in the village, Sasuke was sitting on top of the Hokage monument, the beginning of Naruto's sculpture of his head on the side of the mountain. The mountain carver had even gotten the rest of the village to agree to let him place Naruto's likeness next to his father's and move the rest further down. Yes, it would take longer to carve, but he was content with doing this because Naruto had saved the world. The dobe has definitely gotten better than I remember, though I don't mind being his advisor. It means I can be close to him. It also will make up for the time I try to kill him. Sasuke thought to himself. The shinobi had let him come back to the village, albeit a bit reluctantly, given his past transgressions against the village. Though they couldn't deny that he had been very influential in the turning of the war, along with the fact having the last Uchiha in their village made them that much stronger. Sakura came up from behind Sasuke, who still stood still. Though he had noticed her, he made no move to break out of his memories. "Hey, Sasuke," she called out lightly. This caused Sasuke to look over his shoulder and raised an eyebrow at the pinkette. "What's up, Sakura-chan?" Sakura blushed a bit at the fact she had been called Chan again. Her first love was still strong, but hidden in her. "Can't sleep either, huh?" she commented lightly. Sasuke nodded at this. Sasuke patted the spot next to him, and Sakura gratefully sat down next to him. "Yeah, this is all but odd. The village is so different than last time I was here, though it is a thriving village from what I can see," Sasuke said with a small smile, though the pain was apparent in his eyes. The things he did to this village in the past, and its need would haunt him for the rest of his life, though that didn't stop him from trying to repent. Sakura noticed the pain in his eyes, cupping his hand and laying her head on his shoulder. "It's okay, Sasuke. You don't have to hold back your pain anymore," Sakura commented lightly, giving Sasuke's hand a light smile. Sasuke nodded, returning her squeeze back, releasing a sigh. "Yeah, I'll tell you on another day, but not right now." Sasuke trailed lightly and gave her a soft smile. "You remember all those dates you asked me on in the past?" Sasuke asked lightly. He never forgot anything about the woman next to him had said to him or asked him, and she nodded at this, not entirely following where Sasuke was going. "Will you go on an impromptu date with me?" Sakura's eyes widened at this, turning as bright red as a tomato, but she nodded at this. "I'd love to go on a date with you," Sakura said with a happy smile about what had just happened. Sasuke's smile brightened a bit. "All right, well, how about with the Akimichi barbecue? Naruto's ramen addiction never took hold with me," Sasuke said with a chuckle and stood, helping Sakura up to her feet. Sasuke and Sakura went on their date, completely oblivious to their blonde teammates' inner turmoil. The next day rolls around. Naruto sat behind his desk, flying through paperwork, barely reading it, enough to get the gist of what it was about. "Gah, how did Bachan do it without pulling her hair out?" Naruto thought out loud. Then an idea popped into his head. "Yada!" he exclaimed, forming the hand signs for his signature jutsu. After a moment, the room filled with smoke as it cleared out of the window. About 10 clones were in the room. As the clones looked to their creator to see what their mission was, then as he pointed at the paperwork mountains on the table, they started to grumble to themselves. "The faster we get this done, the faster we can go home and eat ramen," Naruto exclaimed, and the clones perked up at the prospect of their favorite dish and dived into the paperwork. "Well, I'm glad that this will go by a lot quicker," he thought to himself, picking up another paper, the sender bringing his full attention to the contents of the paper. It read, "Ison, I guess you can figure out who this is soon. You were a brilliant tactician during the battle against Kaguya. I wrote this during the time we had a little downtime. I knew my time in this world again was limited, but at least I got to spend some time with you and see you. Your mom will be extremely jealous when I get back. Chuckle well anyway. I don't have much time. Seems the battle is kicking back up. I want you to know I'm proud of you, my son. Never forget that." Naruto's breath hitched at this. They had told him this before, but this still made him very happy to see, And now, whenever he felt down, he could just read this again. Then he began reading again. Well, at the bottom of the page, there's a seal that holds a few jutsus that I had made or perfected in my time. I'm sure you can use them more than I can right now, and put them to better use. Huh. Well, it's time to get back to saving this world again. Oh, and congratulations on becoming Hokage. You finally got one up on me, it seems. Tsunade told me, if I survive this, I'm going to name your brat Hokage and retire. Anyway, me and Kushina love you. Minato Namikaze, the father of the Rokudaime Hokage. Naruto had a big smile on his face. A few small tears dropped from his eyes, tears of happiness. He looked up and noticed that his clones were watching him intently. What are you doing? You don't want ramen? Naruto exclaimed lightly, snapping them back to their job. Kaguya giggled, wrapping her arms around Naruto's midsection, leaning her chin on his shoulder. Relax, it's just me, Ito Shidisu, she said softly as she felt Naruto tense in her embrace. Naruto turned around as he heard her voice. He visibly relaxed, leaning lightly against her. This was going to take some getting used to, but it felt good to have someone hold him in something that wasn't a headlock. Somewhere, Sakura sneezed. Naruto chuckled and turned around in her grip. As he did, he saw how she entered. Black cracks in the dimension seamed themselves back together. Don't sneak up on a ninja like that. It isn't very wise, especially given I am the Hokage now, Naruto said, motioning with his head to the Umbu, who were currently stopped with their katanas drawn, ready to try and strike down the godlike woman before them. Naruto waved them off, and they relaxed, returning to their posts in the room. Kaguya nodded, letting Naruto go. As he sat down in his chair, she sat in his lap, impeding him doing his work. How about instead of you doing this boring paperwork, we go on our first official date? I like to get to know the man I am supposed to spend the rest of my natural life with, Kaguya commented, and Naruto looked at the paperwork, sighing. Even with clones, it was still going to take the better part of a day to finish. Naruto shook his head, giving her a soft smile. No can do. I have to finish this paperwork. Otherwise, I will just have to do what I did today tomorrow, he said. To be honest, he wanted to learn more about her also. There were so many things he could learn from her. After all, she was the progenitor of all things jutsu and chakra-related. Kaguya thumped his forehead softly. Why not just replace yourself with a clone also? That way the workforce is not short-handed, and they still get everything done. She asked curiously. Naruto had to admit her plan had made a lot of sense, and he couldn't fault her logic, though there was his advisor he had to contend with. Because Sakura wouldn't be fooled by a simple clone. His ex-teammate was now head of the Medicine Corp and advisor to the Hokage. It was a post that Sakura took without a moment's hesitation, believing that she was one of the only ones who could truly get through his thick skull, even if it was with a fist. Don't worry about her. As long as the paperwork gets done, she will just have to get over herself, Kaguya said as a matter of factly. Naruto's eyes widened a bit at this. Everyone knew Sakura's inhuman strength, so even the one stronger than her just went along with what she said to avoid a baka punch. Naruto chuckled. He was beginning to like Kaguya more and more by the moment. She was one of the only people aside from him that stood up against Sakura. Albeit Naruto had only done it once or twice, but that's more than can be said for some ninja under him. Well, I cannot fault your logic. So let's go. How about we head to a kimchi barbecue? Naruto asked lightly, and Kaguya nodded, getting up, letting Naruto up. Kaguya lightly grabbed Naruto's hand, interlacing her fingers with his. She shared his sentiments about this, feeling odd. She hadn't felt a man's touch since her late husband, Setsura Utsuki. He was a kind and gentle man who would do anything for those he cared about. She saw a lot of him in Naruto. Well, is this place any good? Kaguya asked lightly, looking over to the blonde Kage next to her. Naruto shrugged. I have never personally been, but all my friends rave about how their food is so good, so I decided to give it a try. Can't just take you to my favorite ramen shop for our first date now, can I? Naruto wasn't a complete loss when it came to wooing women. During his time in the land of snow, during their downtime together, Koyuki had taught him a few things about making a woman happy on a date. Kaguya nodded, and let Naruto lead the way. She had only been in the village for 2 days, so she had pretty much no idea where anything was. Really, as long as we enjoyed ourselves, I'd be fine with anywhere we went, Naruto. She commented lightly with a soft smile. It was true, but Naruto wanted to make their date kind of special, and what better way than a dinner date followed by the best view in the village. A few minutes later, the Akimichi barbecue was reconstructed several times, but now it was a two-story building. When you entered, there was a certain calm ambience that just relaxed you. Along with the soft music playing in the background, it was a good place to have a first date. Naruto went over to Choji and whispered something in his ear. Kaguya really didn't bother to try and listen in to what he was saying, but it seemed to be something about her because of the occasional glance her way. "Thank you, man. I really appreciate it," Naruto said with a bright grin on his face, looking at his old friend. Choji returned the infectious grin and nodded. "It's all good. It's the least I can do for one of my best friends and the Kaguya of my village," Choji said, slapping Naruto on his back lightly, putting him in a light headlock. "Better give me a good review, though, got it? My food is top-notch," Choji said in a low voice, tightening his grip lightly on Naruto. The Kaguya chuckled a little bit and switched himself with a chair. All right. I got it. You better serve me the best you have, then," Naruto exclaimed lightly, and Choji nodded, gaining a determined look on his face. Kaguya chuckled a little at this trait of friendship and followed Naruto as he started moving towards the back of the store, reaching a black door set into the darker red wall. "What's in there, Naruto-kun?" she asked curiously, cocking her head to the side, giving Naruto a curious look. Naruto lightly grabbed her hand, interlacing his fingers with hers. "This is Choji's VIP room. I guess you could say complete privacy here, privacy seals, and everything," Naruto said, and opened the door to the slightly less lit room. But it was still visible in there. The table was lit by a candle, with romantic music playing in the background. This definitely was a more romantic part of the restaurant. Kaguya observed the room, slowly panning her sight around the room. She had to admit, Naruto really did know a thing or two about romance. Glad she gave him the benefit of the doubt. "Well, this is definitely a romantic setting. I wonder how the food here tastes," Kaguya said, giving his hand a light squeeze. Naruto closed the door behind them and nodded, sitting at the seat across from her. It was a C-shaped seat, but Naruto wasn't going to take any chances of sitting close to her, just in case she mistook him being close for an attempt at doing something perverted while they're alone. Kaguya appreciated the gentlemanly gesture of not sitting too close to her on the date, but she honestly wanted him closer. Something just made her want to be close to the blonde knucklehead. "You can come closer, Naruto. I won't bite, I promise," Kaguya said with a reassuring smile, but she was thinking "I won't bite" much, allowing herself a perverted giggle at the thought. Naruto raised a wary eyebrow at her little perverted giggle, but nodded, sliding closer, closing the distance to about half of what it was. "Sorry about that, but I didn't want it to seem like I was trying to be a pervert or anything," Naruto admitted. This time, Kaguya slid closer, closing the rest of the gap. Kaguya smiled at his truthfulness and laid her head on his shoulder, sighing contently. "It's fine, Naruto, though if you do try anything I don't like, I'll have to remove your friend," she said, causing all the guys in the restaurant to cover their precious lower heads in fear of the threat that had been placed. Even Naruto cringed at that prospect, but he would take it slow with her too, because he was new to this, so he didn't want to push her away. She can make such a vicious threat while having such a cute look on her face. She really is a force to be reckoned with, Naruto thought to himself, relaxing and laying his head softly on hers as the door opened. Both of the room's occupants looked up to see a waitress being led in the room by a Zumbu guard detail, which followed him around even in the village for security purposes. The waitress bowed lightly to her Kaguya and smiled softly at the cute couple before her. "I'm honored to be your waitress today. Can I start you with an appetizer or a drink?" she asked, her soft smile never wavering. Naruto nodded and took the offered menu from her and perused it for a moment or two. "Ajidashi tofu," And some cold tea, please. It looks pretty good. What about you, Kaguya-chan? Naruto asked curiously. Kaguya sat up and looked at the menu, taking a few moments herself. I'll have it sukun and some hot tea, please. It's always been good, seemingly, wherever I go. Kaguya said with a smile. The waitress nodded and left the room, leaving the two occupants alone in the room once again. How can you drink hot tea? It's just nasty to me. Naruto exclaimed lightly, causing Kaguya to giggle lightly at his antics. She rolled her eyes lightly and leaned her head back onto his shoulder. Because that's the way it's supposed to be consumed, she exclaimed lightly, causing Naruto to groan a bit in disgust. Naruto blanched at the prospect of having to drink warm tea again. He didn't unless in the rare occurrence he got sick and had a sore throat. It's good for sore throats, but aside from that, I'll think cold tea is better, he exclaimed lightly, a foxish grin crossing his face. Kaguya couldn't help but mimic his grin. Hot tea is the nectar of gods. I should know. People used to revere me as a goddess, she said with a chuckle, causing Naruto to gain a light look of horror on his face. Take that back. Ramen and cold tea is the feast of the gods. He grumbled lightly, his eyes flicking to Kaguya's hand which had snaked its way up to his cheek without him noticing. What a yo dash is all that Naruto could get out, as Kaguya's hand could turn his head her direction. Then something unexpected happened. Naruto had felt something soft and supple against his lips. She is kissing me. Naruto thought in surprise. He really knew nothing about women, so it truly caught him off guard. Kaguya smiled in the middle of the kiss. She had felt a small spark that is fabled to happen between two compatible matches. Shut up and kiss me, she ordered, and Naruto gladly obliged. Naruto wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her a little closer, deepening the kiss a bit. He loved the feeling of her lips on hers. Your lips feel so amazing. Naruto trailed lightly, a slightly drunk smile. Kaguya smiled back and giggled, kissing his cheek. So do yours, but let's agree to disagree on team, she asked lightly. She didn't like arguing with someone she cared about. Choji cleared his throat, garnering the attention of the two starstruck occupants. Your food is here, you two lovebirds, Choji said with a chuckle, causing both of the two occupants to blush brightly at this. Naruto tried speaking but didn't trust his voice, so he just nodded, giving Choji a lopsided grin. Kaguya's blush was calming down faster than Naruto's. Normally, she wouldn't be fazed by showing affection, but when she was caught off guard entirely, she blushed cherry red. Thank you, it smells delicious, she said with a smile, accepting her appetizer, taking a deeper whiff of the food. It looks even better than the picture, Kaguya said lightly, picking up her chopsticks and trying a bit of the food, letting out a light moan of satisfaction at the taste of the food. I stand corrected. This is better than I've had before. Choji gained a smile on his face. He really loved having people enjoy and compliment his food, which was the main reason he took over his father's restaurant. Why, thank you guys. I'm glad you enjoy it, but don't get full on just this. The main course is still coming too, Choji said with a chuckle. Naruto nodded and looked at the menu again, figuring out what he wanted to eat for the main course. Chicken tonkatsu, please, Naruto said. It looked on the menu. It looked pretty good to him. Kaguya looked over his shoulder, letting her chin rest on his broad, comfortable shoulder, perusing the menu. The katsudon looks pretty good. Choji nodded, taking the orders, then bowing, heading to the kitchen, and started preparing their orders. The rest of the dinner date went pretty well in the restaurant. It ended in Naruto finally admitting there might be something better than ramen when Choji brought their dessert. He now knew a new love for red velvet cake. Naruto chuckled lightly as they left the restaurant, rubbing his slightly bulging stomach from eating so much. Man, Choji can cook. I'm glad I didn't go to Ichiraku's for food today, he said, and started heading for his favorite spot to just think, relax, or appreciate the village in all its beauty. Kaguya was curious as to where they were going, because they obviously weren't heading for the Hokage mansion as they veered off the path towards the Hokage mansion. Where are we going? She asked lightly, giving Naruto a kiss on his cheek. not really caring where they went as long as they were together. Naruto just kept quiet as they walked closer to the top of the Hokage monument, which is one of my favorite places in the world. The top of my father's head being part of the Hokage monument. It is a great place to think and just relax here, Naruto said, sitting down on the top of the first blonde Kage's head. Kaguya nodded and sat down next to him, pulling him gently down, putting his head into her lap. Well, this is a beautiful sight where you can see all of the village, Kaguya said, absent-mindedly running her fingers through the blonde Kage's hair as he relaxed with his head on her lap. Naruto woke up a few hours later in his own bed, a bit confused as the last time he remembers being awake, it was on top of the Hokage tower. What's this feeling of something weighing down on my chest? Naruto thought to himself, as he hadn't opened his eyes yet, grabbing the weight on his chest by the scruff, and subsequently a handful of hair. The rabbit goddess yelped lightly as she was rudely awakened by her hair being pulled. I may be a goddess, and like it a bit rough, but that still hurt Naruto-kun, she said, lightly chastising him, giggling a bit. Come back, you make a good pillow. She lightly whined as Naruto used the replacement jutsu to switch himself out with a lamp that was nearby. What are you doing in my bed, Kaguya? Naruto exclaimed, hand clutched tightly around the kunai he always had under his pillow, the sleep slowly defogging his brain. Oh, Gami, I'm so sorry. It's still going to take some time to get used to, Naruto said with a sigh, absent-mindedly throwing the kunai into the middle of a bullseye of a dartboard he had on his wall. Kaguya's eyes flashed a pained look for a moment, but just as quickly as it had appeared, it had disappeared just as quickly. It's fine, Naruto. Don't worry, the feeling's mutual. It's to be expected we will both be a bit on guard considering we haven't been together that long. Even more, we were just enemies a few days ago. She trailed lightly and sighed, running a hand through her hair, her gaze becoming softer as she saw Naruto relaxed visibly. Though if you're truly sorry, we can stay home for the day and learn more about each other, she asked, trying not to sound too hopeful, biting her bottom lip in anticipation as to what his answer to her question would be. Naruto brought his hand under his chin, giving it a thoughtful rub as he remembered what his schedule for today currently was. I can't promise all day, but I can promise a few hours of time that we can spend learning things about each other, Naruto said with a light smile, walking back over to his bed and sitting down next to Kaguya, rubbing her hand with his thumb. Kaguya smiled lightly at this, giving Naruto's hand a light squeeze. All right, I'll go first. What would you like to know about me? Kaguya asked curiously, and Naruto gained another thoughtful pose. Naruto thought for a few moments before coming up with his first question. I remembered something back from when I was younger. Kakashi, who was my sensei, had us do this on our first day as a team. Tell me your likes, dislikes, things like that. That's a good place to begin, Naruto said with a foxish grin as the memories of the days of his truly knucklehead ninja moments. Kaguya nodded, her smile widening a bit as his grin was infectious. He just radiated calm and happiness. Well, my likes are many things, but the top things would have to be... She trailed lightly as she thought about this for a moment or two. It'd have to be rabbits, mochi, manga, and a certain orange book, Kaguya said with a perverted giggle as she pulled out the copy Jiraiya had given him at one point. While Naruto slept, Kaguya had read some of the book. Naruto's face faulted at her first and last likes, sighing a bit, muttering something about Erosen influencing people even now. I'll take that, Naruto said simply, grabbing the book, watching Kaguya dramatically launching herself at the book of her current affection. Kaguya lightly pouted a bit, but sighed a bit. Where was I? Oh yeah, my dislikes now. I dislike the Edo Tensei, cheaters, and people who excessively train, Kaguya said, making Naruto cringed a bit as one of his favorite things to do was training until he couldn't stand. Though thankfully for our blonde, knucklehead ninja Kaguya was too distracted with her thoughts to notice his reaction. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, chuckling sheepishly as he cleared his throat and began himself. Well, to begin, I like ramen, cute things. He trailed lightly, his gaze flicking to Kaguya for a moment before continuing. The color orange. Am I Nachon and Tucson? He said with a bright smile, referring to Iam and Tucci of his favorite ramen stand. Kaguya heard about him liking Iam, and her eyes narrowed lightly at the blonde. You don't like her like that, do you? Kaguya asked icily. She wouldn't do anything to Iam, but depending on how Naruto answered, he may not be leaving the house without a red slap mark. Naruto shivered as he felt the key coming off of the slightly irate, silver-haired woman. And no, not like that. I've known her since I was little, and she always treated me like her little brother. So I just started calling her One-Ichan. She's family, he exclaimed lightly, bringing his hands up in an attempt at a complicating manner to calm the rabbit goddess. Kaguya visibly relaxed and smiled lightly at him. Good, because as I said earlier, I hate cheaters. Kaguya said, making sure to put a bit of emphasis on the last word to make her point. Anyway, what are your hopes and dreams, Naruto-kun? She asked lightly, standing up before promptly lightly flopping in Naruto's lap as his legs hung over the edge of the bed. Well, since I'm the Hokage now, I am not entirely sure, honestly. I guess I want to raise a happy family and actually be able to be there for them. Naruto mused softly, looking over to Kaguya, who had a light smile on her face and a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Okay, Kaguya, what are you planning?" Naruto asked warily as Kaguya began playing innocent. Kaguya giggled a bit. She was hatching a devious plan. Standing up, she focused for a moment, and a black portal opened behind her. "Stay here for a second, and I shall be right back," she said simply, stepping through the portal, looking back to make sure Naruto wasn't following her. Naruto raised an eyebrow as she stepped through the portal, but stayed put, but his mind was wandering as he tried to figure out what that was about. What was that all about? He mused out loud, not noticing the smell of pheromones in the air. Kurama noticed, though, with his sense of smell being connected to Naruto's, and snickered a bit at his host's denseness towards the opposite sex. "Kit, you're too much at times, but I'm sure you will like whatever she has planned," Kurama said cryptically to his host. Naruto was more confused now, but he laid down on his bed, not really noticing he was tired, so he fell asleep a few moments later. A few minutes later, the black portal that Kaguya left and opened back up in their room. As she stepped through, she was no longer in her long white kimono. Now, she was in a lacy set of lingerie, white, thin stockings that were attached to her garter belt with thin white straps. Her rather impressive C-cups that were perky by themselves were supported by a thin lacy white bra with a front clasp. How is he already asleep? Was I really gone that long? She thought to herself, but shrugged and headed over to the edge of the bed, poking Naruto to make sure he was actually asleep instead of planning a surprise for her. When she was sufficiently satisfied he was asleep, she straddled Naruto, gaining a light smirk on her face as she slowly started gyrating her hips. Naruto felt something on the outside world as he was dreaming about ramen, so he slowly woke himself up. "Huh?" Naruto groggily asked out loud, opening one sleepy eye, his eyes opening fully and widening further as he realized what was happening. "Kei Kaguya-chan." He trailed lightly as he pinched back a nosebleed, letting out a soft moan at her ministrations. "You're awake now? Good. I thought this might work to wake you up," she said with a light smile, biting her bottom lip as what she was doing was now affecting her a lot more than anticipated. "God, just by the bulge in his pants, I can tell I'm going to love the things he can do," she thought to herself, turning herself on more as she envisioned as to what her man had hidden. Naruto let out a slightly louder moan, as did a few hand signs, and after a moment or two none of the early morning animals could be heard any longer. "I'm glad I had these seals installed," he mused out loud, grabbing Kaguya by the waist and flipped them over. This caused Kaguya to let out a giggle in surprise as he took control over the situation. For some reason it further turned her on that he was taking control. "Oh, two can play at that game," she said simply, pulling him into a deep kiss, her tongue rubbing softly against his lips. Naruto took this hint and let his lips open, their tongues meeting halfway and beginning their heated battle for dominance. Naruto let his hands started roaming up and down her side softly, his hands barely touching her skin, causing her to yearn for him to touch her more. Kaguya, this is definitely a pleasant surprise, Naruto said throatily, lust apparent in his eyes as they took a few moments to catch their breath before they both dived back into the kiss. Naruto reached around and gave Kaguya's plump but perky ass a light squeeze, eliciting another surprised giggle. Kaguya smiled in the middle of the kiss, lifting her crotch up to give Naruto a better feel of her ass, along with gyrating her crotch against Naruto's. You're the dominant type, huh? That means we will clash at times, 'cause I'm a switch, she said with a chuckle, her breath hitching lightly as Naruto began placing slow kisses along her neck and down her collar. Naruto was no longer really listening, driven by an instinct buried deeply inside of himself that he ignored until now. Kaguya, he breathed out, his voice becoming husky and deeper than usual as his lust was now starting to take over. Kaguya shivered a bit as he throatily said her name in her ear. This young man couldn't have known her weakness, but he was hitting them all like he knew them from the beginning. Naruto, she mewed out, riding in pleasure at Naruto's teasing as he ran his hand up her inner thigh, sending light waves of pleasure throughout her body. Naruto suddenly stopped his normal ministrations, which greatly confused Kaguya for a moment. Are you sure you want to go through with this? He asked lightly, it coming out a little throatier than he intended. Finally able to gain a bit of control over his lust for the sexy and beautiful woman laying before her half-naked. A smile graced Kaguya's face as she nodded, propping herself up on her elbows and giving him a soft but caring kiss. Yes, Naruto, for one, I haven't had a man's touch in a few millennia, and you're my fiancé now, so why should I be reserved about this? It's a natural thing, she said, and giggled lightly as Naruto kissed her forehead before going back to what he was doing. That was all Naruto needed to hear as he slowly started placing kisses down her neck and collar again, now leaving butterfly kisses across her chest until he got to her bra clasp. This needs to, he said simply, tugging at the clasp until it came off with a satisfying pop. The bra fell off to the side, not fully falling off, but it now revealed Kaguya's perky breasts. Damn, they're even better than I imagined Hinata's as. Naruto thought to himself as he stared lightly at her perky C-cups. They seemed to defy gravity, a bit topped off with light, dusty pink nipples. Naruto didn't really have a preferences for breastwear, but he was now sure that Kaguya was it now. Kaguya felt lightly embarrassed under the blonde's analytical gaze and covered her breasts with her arm. Don't stare so much. It's embarrassing. She trailed cutely, her curved index finger at her lips in a cute way of trying to defend herself from the embarrassment. Naruto smiled softly at the cuteness and slightly pried her arm from her chest, but she was stronger than she looked without using force. It's okay, Kaguya. You're beautiful and sexy. There's nothing wrong with you, Naruto said softly. And he wasn't lying. Her skin was perfect, not a blemish in sight, or an imperfection that Naruto could see. She was literally a goddess given physical form, and Naruto reveled at this aspect. Kaguya reluctantly removed her arm and nodded. Men and women revered or feared her, but why was this blonde Kaguya making her feel like a schoolgirl again? All right, if you say so, but it's unfair if I'm the only one getting undressed, she said softly, and Naruto took this as his cue to take off his shirt, causing Kaguya's eyes to widen a bit at the sight before her. Naruto was toned and muscular, but not in that disgusting bodybuilder way. His physique screamed raw power, sporting a six-pack and toned pecs. Now I see why you felt embarrassed when I stared, he said with a sheepish chuckle, rubbing the back of his head lightly, giving his signature sheepish grin, snapping Kaguya from her stupor from looking at Naruto's body. Definitely Adonis, she whispered to herself, but Naruto heard it and blushed at this unexpected compliment. Naruto, you have a body other men would kill for. How come you don't have a lot of fangirls fawning over you? She asked curiously, genuinely surprised he didn't have any fangirls. Naruto shrugged at this, giving a light chuckle. I always train in private, because I tend to get destructive, so they don't get the chance to see my body, he said with a smirk, beginning his kisses around her right breast, giving her nipple an exploratory lick, garnering a soft moan from Kaguya, who was caught off guard by the sudden pleasure. Continuing his ministrations, he took her left breast in his left hand and started fondling it softly while licking the right's hard nipple. Kaguya writhed under his actions, running her hands through his hair, pulling it softly as she felt herself get wetter as he worked harder to pleasure her. God, Naruto, you're an expert at this, she said, letting out a pleased mewl as he nibbled softly on her nipple. Kaguya took his distraction as her advantage when he let go of her nipple and rolled back over, adjusting her position until her crotch was hovering right out of reach for Naruto's hungry lips. Naruto was a bit surprised at the sudden position change, but he was happy because he now had Kaguya's pussy in his face. There was an almost intoxicating aroma coming from there, and it was driving him up the wall with lust, but he kept himself in control, pulling her panties to the side. You're so Kaguya, he said simply as his mouth salivated at the prospect of tasting her delectable flavor, so he just dug in lightly, his tongue flicking across her folds, lapping up the juices that leaked out of her soaked pussy, loving the flavor she gave off. Kaguya gasped a bit in surprise at the sudden attack on her lower half, but wouldn't be deterred from her mission. Unzipping his pants with her teeth, reaching in and pulling Naruto's erect penis from his pants, and marveling at its size. Oh, Dirigami, are you sure you're not a god, Naruto? She asked with a giggle, giving Naruto a light pump, licking the tip of his fully erect 8.5 penis. Naruto chuckled and started attacking her clit with his tongue, inserting 2 fingers into her tight womanhood. Dunno about that, but I'd like to think so, Naruto said with a smirk, before his tongue entered her soaking wet and hot pussy, lapping up all the delectable juices at the source. Kaguya mewled softly, gyrating her hips against Naruto's face as she felt orgasm coming closer after moments passed by. God, Naruto, right there, she exclaimed lightly, stroking Naruto a bit, licking up the side of his shaft, taking the tip of his penis into her mouth. This was something she hadn't even done for her husband, but for some reason, she wanted to for Naruto. Naruto let out a pleased groan as he felt his penis enter Kaguya's mouth. It may have just been the tip, but she was working him over well. He wasn't going to be outdone, so with his thumb he started rubbing her clit in slow but deliberate circles, applying a small amount of pressure, feeling his orgasm coming faster as she took more of his penis in her mouth. Kaguya swirled her tongue around the tip as much as she could while it was in her mouth, slowly bobbing up and down, using her free hand to push her hair that was getting in the way behind her ear, taking it about halfway into her mouth. God, he's so thick. Can I take it all the way? She thought to herself as she tried to take it further, gabbing a bit as she did. Naruto heard her gag and placed a hand on her leg to garner her attention. Don't force yourself to do it if you can't. It's fine the way it is, Naruto said with a slightly concerned look on his face. Kaguya blushed a bit at this, but slid all the way off of his throbbing penis, pumping it lightly as she turned to face Naruto a bit. It's okay, Naruto. I want to do this. And if you keep this up, you may make me really fall for you, she said with a soft giggle before taking his penis back in her mouth. When she got back to her last position, she slides down more slowly. As she goes, she begins taming her gag reflex until she is down to the base of his penis. Naruto nearly went cross-eyed as he felt Kaguya take him all the way in her mouth. It was the best pleasure he had ever felt. Masturbating paled in comparison as this new wave of euphoria washed over him, and he felt like he was floating on a cloud. God, this feels amazing. I think it'll come soon if you keep this up, Naruto mused softly and frowned lightly as he felt Kaguya pull all the way back, then stopped straddling him until he saw where she was now positioned. Kaguya had gotten up and off the bed, heading over towards a dresser, now with her panties down, bent over the dresser. We can't have you coming yet. The fun has just started. Now, come over here and make me feel like a woman again. She almost ordered, gaining a smirk as she saw Naruto seem to get harder as he saw the alluring positioning she was currently in. Naruto grinned at the order and got up, moving over to the sexy woman bent over the dresser. Yes, ma'am, don't mind if I do, he said, a smirk now plastered on his face, positioning himself to where his penis was aimed to enter her soaked pussy, sliding just the tip in before slowly removing himself, silently cursing at leaving the amazing feeling, but he wanted to tease her. Kaguya growled softly in annoyance as she noticed Naruto was teasing her now. She had waited for too long to get some from someone she had feelings for. Naruto-kun, she dragged out, gyrating her hips and pushing them closer to Naruto, but Naruto held fast, keeping her in place. I'm in control now, so you'll have to wait for now, Naruto said, using one hand to slowly rub the tip of his penis against her soaked pussy, sending waves of pleasure through her. Naruto smirked, as he loved the feeling of power he had over her right now. Kaguya growled in light annoyance at Naruto's teasing, deciding to take control this time, using a little chakra to overpower Naruto's grip on her hips. Impaling herself on Naruto's rock-hard cock, her breath hitching as she felt Naruto fill her up with his large dick. Oh God, I miss this feeling of being filled up to the brim, Kaguya said softly, gyrating her hips softly against him. Naruto let out a guttural moan as she became completely wrapped around his rock-hard member. If he thought the earlier feeling was amazing, this felt almost like heaven to him. Oh God, you're so tight, and feel amazing, Kaguya. Naruto trailed softly, giving Kaguya a moment for her to adjust to him, then started moving slowly, starting a light thrusting rhythm. Kaguya's moans started picking up as Naruto started moving as waves of pleasure started washing over her even more. Oh God, you're so big, Kaguya said in between moans, gyrating her hips as she thrusted back towards against him, meeting him halfway. Feeling her orgasm coming closer, faster and faster as Naruto picked up the pace. I don't think I'll be able to last long with as tight and amazing as you feel, Naruto exclaimed lightly, picking up the pace even more, lightly spinning his hips as he thrusted. Kurama, I'm going to need your help to outlast her at this rate, Naruto thought to himself, rousing the most powerful of all the 9 bijou from needed beauty rest. Kurama opened one eye, and seeing through his sight a grin became etched onto his normally stoic face. Good going, kid. I'll help you out here, Kurama mused lightly, letting a bit of gold chakra flow through him, revitalizing his stamina a bit, trying to make him last longer. Kaguya felt a wave of caring and happiness roll over her as she was connected to Naruto, so she felt the gold chakra course through him. Two can play at that game, she thought to herself, sending chakra to her pussy, revitalizing its stamina as well as hers. They were now about even in terms of how close they were to their respective orgasms. Naruto felt his balls tighten, signaling he was going to come soon, but he knew Kaguya was close, as she was trying to milk him for everything he had. Kaguya, I'm going to come soon, he exclaimed lightly, picking up the pace to max, reaching around her and groping her breasts. This nearly sent Kaguya over the edge, but Kaguya held fast as she bit her bottom lip. Her own orgasm was just around the corner. Let's come together, Naruto, she exclaimed lightly, taking one of the hands from her breasts, interlacing her fingers with his, giving it a gentle squeeze. Naruto nodded as he did a few long thrusts before burying himself deep inside of Kaguya's heavenly pussy. Coming harder than he ever has before, his potent seed spraying all over her fertile walls, coating it with a wave or two. Oh God, that was amazing, Naruto mused out loud, slowly slipping outside of her, picking her up princess style and laid her down on the bed, laying down next to her a few moments later. Both of their breathing was a bit haggard. Kaguya nodded and giggled softly, cuddling up to Naruto, laying her head on his chest. Yes, that was amazing, and I'm so full. It's insane how much you came, but are still so hard, she said with a soft yawn, snuggling closer to Naruto as her consciousness left her until she went to sleep when things go right. Kaguya was the first one to wake up, and she thought about making Naruto breakfast after he had fallen asleep right after their lovemaking session. But she realized something. She didn't really know how to use any of the devices Naruto had in his kitchen. Hell, she was a goddess, but she couldn't figure her way around a kitchen. What does this switch do? Kaguya mused silently as she turned the knob, and it did nothing at first, but after a few moments she could feel the element warming up on the stovetop. As she wandered around the kitchen, she looked for something to cook, only to realize that Naruto didn't have much in the way of actual food, so she'd have to go buy some more. So that's exactly what she did after writing a note telling Naruto where she was going after turning off the oven. Naruto woke up a few hours later to a cold other side of the bed, and he looked around to see if he could find Kaguya, but he couldn't. So he got out of bed and saw the note on the nightstand and began reading it. Hey Naruto, I've gone to the market to pick up some food. All you have is that horrendous instant ramen stuff, but I shall be back soon. The note read in her handwriting. Sure enough, a few moments after he finished reading the note, space started to distort in front of him before a horizontal black line with cracks running up and down it opened in front of him. I'm back, Naruto. You'd be surprised at how hard it is to find the market here. I had to wander around town like a normal person to not freak everyone out, Kaguya said as she set her bags down on the table. Though something amazing happened when I got there, a lot of the merchants recognized me as the wife of the savior, and their Kaguya, and just gave me what I asked for. Seems our fight did come with some perks, she mused with a soft giggle. Naruto rubbed the sleep from his eyes and chuckled a little at this. If he had known, he would have gone with her and insisted on paying, but he wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Well, good morning to you, Kaguya. And that's awesome, Databeo. So what's for breakfast? Naruto asked curiously as he sat down at the dining room table. Kaguya let the stove heat up before turning back to Naruto. Well, just your typical breakfast for now, with scrambled cheese eggs, bacon, toast, and pancakes, she said simply as she turned back to the oven, thinking it might be a good idea to put on an apron so the bacon didn't pop her. She might have tough skin, but that didn't mean she liked pain, at least the type that comes from being popped with grease, she thought with a quiet pervy giggle as she put on the apron over her stark naked front, giving Naruto a wonderful view to enjoy. Naruto held back a nosebleed that threatened to force its way out, but he had a busy day dealing with paperwork, so he couldn't have any more fun for now. That sounds good to me, and it's already smelling good, Naruto commented. He normally just cooked a cup of ramen or 12 and went about his day, but he would let her cook for him. As much as he loved ramen, it did get kind of boring and stale after eating it so much. Naruto got up to put the extra that Kaguya wasn't using in the fridge before wrapping his arms around her waist. Kaguya hummed a soft tune as she cooked breakfast for the both of them, leaning into Naruto's grip, feeling content and warm, feeling her heart rate picking up a bit at the intimate touch. You're rather more affectionate than I at first expected, but I like it, she mused softly, turning and angling her head so they could share a soft kiss. Naruto chuckled a bit and kissed her back. Well, there's a lot of backed-up loving of someone I haven't done, so I will show you that, Naruto said softly before a thought popped into his head as he realized there was still something left undone. Hey, when would you like to have our wedding? You kind of did assert yourself as my mate and fiancé, Naruto mused out loud, causing Kaguya to gain a thoughtful look on her face at his question. Kaguya thought about it for a moment and came up with a good idea. Well, how about this Christmas coming up in a couple of months? I always want a white winter wedding. My last one was in the spring, Kaguya said with a bit of a sad tone to her voice. Naruto gave her waist a light squeeze, bringing her out of her getting darker thoughts before he nodded, rubbing his stubble against her cheek, causing her to giggle at the sensation. That's fine by me, and oh, did that tickle? Naruto asked with a bit of a devious tone to his voice, and Kaguya froze as she tried to escape from Naruto's grip, but it was a vice around her waist. Kaguya knew that she was in for it now. "Oh, don't you dare," Kaguya said as she rotated in Naruto's grip to face him as he pinned her up against the counter softly and began tickling her with his stubble in his hands, causing Kaguya to burst into giggles and flailing. Naruto chuckled a bit deviously as he watched Kaguya flail and giggle at his ministrations before he suddenly stopped, allowing Kaguya to get her breath. "You're ticklish? I shall take advantage of that whenever I want now." Naruto smiled softly as he let her go. Kaguya pouted lightly at his teasing, knowing he would keep his promise to keep abusing her with tickling. But since it was Naruto, she wasn't too upset about it. "Fine, but only if I get to use you as my pillow whenever I want," Kaguya said with finality, and Naruto nodded. Then an idea popped into her head. "Hey, Naruto, I was thinking about how we first met, and I'd like to propose something to you. I really don't have any actual combat training, and you probably would like to learn more about your sage powers, right?" she asked, causing Naruto to nod, but look at her curiously, him piecing the meaning together. Naruto looked like a light bulb had gone off in his head as he figured out what she meant. "You want to train with each other, right? That's fine by me, but we have to clear it by TS dash." Naruto started to say before he remembered he was now the Hokage, so he didn't have to clear it with anyone. So he grinned and nodded to give her his answer. "All right, that's fine by me, and I know somewhere where we can train in relative privacy," Naruto said with a small smile. He knew he couldn't convince the Umbu detail that was tailing him to leave them entirely alone, as they were there and weren't allowed to let him leave farther than they could see for security reasons. Kaguya grinned a bit as she figured out a way to evade their personal security detail and still stay safe. She leaned close to Naruto, knowing the Umbu were just outside the Hokage mansion, but she didn't want them hearing her plan. "Well, you know how I can travel between dimensions, right? I don't need the Sharingan to do that. It's one of my intrinsic powers," she whispered with a conspiratorial grin as the realization dawned upon Naruto as to what she meant. Naruto nodded at what she was saying, as what she said made sense. They were still safe, and any new skills or techniques they created would have no chance of being found except for maybe by Sasuke. "All right, 1 second," Naruto said softly, creating his signature cross-hand sign as 10 clones popped into existence and nodded, knowing what they needed to do. One took off towards the Hokage Tower with his robes on and his hat on his back. The clones shunned shy to the Hokage Tower as the Umbu followed Naruto's clone. Right as we panned back to Naruto and Kaguya, the black crack in the fabric of space was stitching itself back up. Kaguya put Naruto down on the sand, as this was the best dimension she had that wasn't too hot or too cold. "All right, now that we're here, what not?" She hadn't really thought of what to do once they actually got here. It was a kind of spur-of-the-moment plan. Naruto gained a thoughtful look on his face as he thought about how they should start their training with each other. Then he came up with an idea. "Well, how about a spar so that we can find out where both of us are really at? Because our first fight was with my team on its last legs, with low chakra limiting what we could do." Naruto observed as he thought about the battle. Kaguya nodded in agreement. Even then, she wanted to see what they could do at full capacity, but Madara had taken most of their fight out of them. "All right, that's fine by me. Let's try this out," she said as she started undoing her kimono, catching Naruto off guard. Naruto's eyes widened a bit in surprise at what she was doing. What are you doing?" Naruto exclaimed as he turned around. Even though they were engaged, it would still take some time getting used to her undressing in front of him. Kaguya cocked her head curiously at Naruto, who was blushing, peeking at her. "What do you mean, Dana?" she asked curiously, causing Naruto to turn around just as he turned around. As he looked her over once, he noted that Kaguya actually had made a white bone version of Madara's combat armor before he entered Rikudo Sennin mode. A silver shirt and pair of high-water pants akin to the Jonin outfit with a silver metal mesh underclothes on as well. Naruto let out a breath of relief that he wouldn't have to fight Kaguya with her nude, or nearly nude. That would be too distracting to him. "I thought you were going to spar with me in your underwear," Naruto trailed, chuckling sheepishly while rubbing the back of his head. Kaguya gained a small grin on her face, a black portal opening behind her as Naruto was distracted, another one opening right behind Naruto as her hands reached around him. One hand was under his chin, and the other was draped over his shoulder. "Oh, would you have preferred that, Dana?" She whispered with a bit of a teasing, sultry tone in Naruto's ear. Naruto's eyes widened as he registered what had just happened, causing him to jump away from her on pure instinct trained over the years. "What? Kaguya, let's just stay like this. This is better. Yeah, better for now." Trailed unconvincingly. The way he was saying it was just further proving Kaguya's point, as he seemed to be trying to convince himself more than her. Kaguya just let out a soft laugh before stretching out a hand towards Naruto, giving him the come-at-me hand motion, signaling she was ready to spar. "I'm ready whenever you are, Naruto Dana," Kaguya said softly, her eyes changing from their normal impassive expression to one of hardened determination as she mimicked the stance Naruto was using. "Byakugan," she thought to herself as the veins on the side of her head became pronounced, signaling she had activated one of the bloodlines that had originated from her. Naruto drew a kunai from his thigh holster, not moving an inch after that, then began a stare down between the two godly powerhouses. "Ugh, that's going to make things harder. If I remember correctly from my battle with Niji, the Byakugan has 360-degree field of view." Naruto thought nervously to himself as a slow breeze passed by them. Kaguya had 3 times the visual range of most Hyuga, being the progenitor of the bloodline, after all, so she could see every detail of Naruto. As the breeze stopped, Kaguya launched forward towards Naruto as if a proverbial starter gun was fired. "On guard, Naruto!" she exclaimed, bringing her bone sword from above Naruto, starting her offensive. Naruto's eyes widened a bit as he almost didn't see her move. Was she actively trying to prevent from killing us during the war and resisting the Edo Tensei? She wasn't this fast during our first battle. Naruto thought frantically himself, his muscles instinctively going up to block the bone sword. As the sword came into contact with his kunai, sparks flew. Kaguya spun 360 degrees, causing Naruto to let his kunai drop into his other hand in a reverse grip to block the sword strike from his right side. "Small, you're going to have to do better than that," Kaguya taunted jokingly as she then started swinging with unrefined power towards him. Naruto noted this as well. It seemed she really hadn't had any formal combat training and had just slaughtered the warlords of her time with pure power. "We'll see who's tapping out." "It's not going to be me," Naruto said with a smirk as his eyes suddenly gained an orange rings of sage mode, and the bar pupil like a toad's on his eyes as he had subconsciously mastered taking a nature chakra over time, sort of like Sakura's Byakugan no In. Reaching for Kaguya's overextended arm, he grabbed it, swinging her overhead with ease, laying Kaguya flat on her back, causing Kaguya to cough a bit as the air was knocked from her lungs. Kaguya clenched her teeth as she rolled out of the way of a downward axe kick aimed to knock her out. "Seems you're not holding back. What's the rules?" "No kill shots," she asked curiously as she had to dodge Naruto's swift attacks, which were enhanced by nature chakra. Thankfully, since she had her Byakugan activated, she could see each limb being prepped to attack before it happened as Naruto subconsciously channeled chakra into his limbs to hit harder. Naruto was getting a bit annoyed that someone who had no formal training in the ninja arts, or even more than basic combat, was easily dodging him. "Yeah, though we can't really test each other's limits if we hold back, can we?" he asked lightly, as he turned fully back around from a roundhouse kick which Kaguya had ducked under, causing Naruto to grin a bit. Kaguya cocked her head curiously as to why Naruto was grinning, then she noticed the surge of chakra into his leg. She had done exactly what he wanted. It was hard to recover or dodge from an attack while crouched like this, so she brought her arms up to block the attack. "Good plan if I was anyone else," she said with her own faint grin as she caught Naruto's leg, tripping his other leg by extending her leg towards Naruto's leg he was using to stand quickly. Naruto's eyes widened a bit as the ground began approaching quickly after he was tripped. "You're pretty good so far, but let's see how you like this too," Naruto exclaimed as he tapped into Kurama's chakra, cloaking him a golden aura of his Rakuto, Sannin form minus the truth orbs for now. He disappeared from Kaguya's grip, appearing a few feet away from Kaguya in a flash of gold, cracking his knuckles with his trademark foxish grin on his face. Kaguya was a bit, she became aware how warm and caring the chakra was coming off of Naruto. Is that really Kurama's chakra? She asked softly, as she hadn't paid it any attention, or moreover couldn't when they were fighting during the war. Though she just couldn't believe the furball, as she called him, could produce any feeling aside from pure hatred. Naruto's slit iris across his eyes became more pronounced, and his features became more feral as a cue that Kurama was in control for now. Yes, Kasan, that's my true power when my Jinchuriki and I come to team up instead of fighting for dominance, Kurama said, donning his own version of Naruto's foxish grin, but this one was more animalistic compared to Naruto's. Kaguya laughed softly as she stood back up slowly, launching herself at Naruto again, causing him to disappear from view again. Kaguya easily finding Naruto after he reappeared. To the Byakugan, Kurama's chakra was like a beacon in a dark night for her, sending some bone shard from the tips of her fingers at Naruto at a frightening speed. The sound of several metallic clinks were heard as Naruto blocked the bone shards with his kunai. Kind of figured it would be hard to hide in this form from your Byakugan, Naruto mused as he stepped from behind a sand dune, disappearing again before appearing in front of Kaguya again. Hey, Naruto said with a grin, before kissing Kaguya and disappearing again. Kaguya's eyebrow twitched in slight annoyance as he was making fun of her for not being as fast as him by this jester-like act before pain flared in her upper arm. Reaching up to the spot where the pain came from, she found blood when she pulled her hand back. Well, it has been a long time since anyone has been able to make me bleed, so I commend you on that. Only my own son, Hagoromo, landed an actual cut on me, Kaguya said as the wound healed. Naruto had actually been curious to see if she actually bled, as she was literally a goddess incarnate, so he didn't think it was possible for her to bleed. Well, that answers that question, Naruto said with a chuckle before turning back to face Kaguya as they both dashed at each other, causing the ground to spiderweb crack a bit under the force they were using. Kaguya was struggling a bit to keep from being overpowered by Naruto, combing Sage Mode, and Kurama's chakra made him a physical powerhouse without her draining his chakra. Well, this definitely is more fun than last time, Kaguya said with a chuckle, a smile crossing her face. Naruto flashed back a foot or so as a Rasengan formed in his hand with only one hand. He knew even if this actually hit her, it might annoy her at worst. Let's see how you like this one, Naruto thought to himself as he infused some of the Kokuo's chakra into it. Charging at her, as Kaguya swung at his midsection with her sword, Naruto disappeared again right before contact. Sukumu Rasengan, Naruto exclaimed as he hit her in her side with the Rasengan. Kaguya's eyes widened a bit as she was sent spiraling towards a tree, hitting it, and going through it one more which cracked before falling over. That actually hurt, Naruto-kun, Kaguya admonished with a sickly sweet smile on her face with her eyes closed. Naruto's celebration was cut short by the ki in the area grew as thick as molasses around him. Oh crap, maybe I overdid it, Naruto thought to himself. Then just as it had appeared, the ki disappeared, causing Naruto's eyes to widen as he looked around frantically, trying to figure out where the next attack would come from, as it wasn't that easy for anyone to calm down really. A black portal cracked open the space right behind Naruto, and two arms wrapped around Naruto's waist. Strength of 1,000 suplex, Kaguya exclaimed as she bent over backward with Naruto still in her arms, slamming him into the rocks that were below their feet, causing it to crack before bowing into a half circle roughly twice the size of a typical Sakura chakra punch. Kaguya fell through a black portal before appearing in another one a few feet away. Naruto groaned as he peeled himself out of the person-sized crater that he had created, cracking his neck to get the kinks out of it that he had gained from the suplex. Thanks, Kurama, That would have seriously hurt if you hadn't softened the ground. Naruto thought as he flashed out of the huge creator Kaguya had created using Naruto. A terse snort was heard and of Naruto's head from the one in question. Well, I couldn't just let you be defeated that easily, Kurama said before laying his head back on his paws. It was easy for Kurama to use his chakra to essentially instantly turn the rock to sand anyway. Kaguya was a bit surprised that Naruto walked away from that still conscious, much less with nothing more than a sore neck. That would take out anyone else, maybe even your friend Sasuke as well. Kaguya mused as she dropped her bone sword. It had started growing cracks in it from their last kunai to bone sword battle. Even if it was hardened, it was still bone. Naruto gained a determined look on his face as he noticed that Kaguya was starting to sweat heavily, gaining a grin on his face. This will be a battle of attrition, as we both won't back down and have inhuman stamina. So me subtly adding Koko's chakra into her, causing her temperature to raise and make her sweat should speed up that process. Naruto thought his idiotic persona had been dropped when he went into battle. A ninja's best weapon was deception, and his idiotic personality was really just a front until combat made him serious. Kaguya fanned herself a bit as she noticed it was hotter than it was a moment before, and her armor was becoming a bit uncomfortable with the sudden temperature increase. Cleaver Naruto, using Kokuo's chakra to raise my internal temperature to make this battle end faster. But it'll take more than that to beat me. She analytically identified his plan. Naruto scared at his plan being so easily being found out. Then again, he wasn't very subtle when it came to naming his new Rasengan. Here, I was thinking I had managed to pull one over on you, Naruto said with a small chuckle before his hands came out in front of him. His fingers splayed out as a ball of purple and black chakra began to form in front of him. Kaguya cocked an eyebrow at this technique. It seemed familiar, but she couldn't quite place her finger on what it was until she realized it was a powered-down version of what the Ten-Tail had used to level half of a mountain range. Crap! Bijudama! Kaguya exclaimed mentally as her eyes widened. If she got hit by this, it wouldn't do any serious damage, but it would hurt a lot. Bringing up a hastily thickened wall of bone, she braced for impact. Naruto smirked, as he knew even with only this power level, it would go through even a triple Rashomon barrier. So when it got to a satisfying level, he let it loose. Sorry, Kaguya-chan, but this is my match, Naruto exclaimed as he watched the Bijudama impact the bone wall. After a few seconds of the devastating attack clearing, an entire sand dune was vaporized along with Kaguya. Or so Naruto thought. Oh crap, I really overdid it now. I was sure she could easily survive that. Naruto thought frantically, thinking he had vaporized his fiancée. A melodic laughter was heard as a black portal opened behind Naruto again, feeling the edge of sharp bones soared against his throat, causing him to relax a bit only to tense again at the blade. Sorry, Naruto-kun, but it seems I win this one. I have to say that would have hurt a lot, but thankfully my bone wall gave me enough time to get away, Kaguya said from behind Naruto. Her right arm's bone pauldron was gone, and her arm was pretty badly singed. Naruto raised his hands as he slowly turned around to face Kaguya with a foxish grin on his face. Well, it does seem I would lose if I hadn't already planned for this, Naruto said, motioning his hand to over her shoulder. Behind her was a Naruto clone in base form. With her focusing on his chakra signature, he was banking on the fact she wouldn't notice a basic clone trying to hide his signature. It seems this match is a draw, Naruto said as he put his hands down. The clone had a kunai aimed at Kaguya's kidneys, a hand on the O-ring of the kunai for extra force. Kaguya removed the bone sword from Naruto's neck, letting the bone sword dissipate back into bone shards, blowing away in the wind, causing the clone to disperse himself. It seems that was fun. I haven't had that much fun in a long time, Dana. Thanks for that, she said with a soft smile as she floated over towards Naruto, actively trying to walk normally soon. Naruto placed both hands behind his head as golden chakra cloak suddenly disappeared as it was deactivated. Yeah, that was fun. We have to do that again sometime. Anyway, I see where you can improve upon. You really don't have an actual fighting style. You're using bits and pieces of what you see in battle. That may be good in all most of the time, but if you want to be a real powerhouse, using a fighting style. As far as your movements go, you're rather graceful in your movements. Naruto expertly broke down their fight while trying to think of a style of fighting that would fit for her. I've heard a martial art style from far out east called Aikido. It's as graceful and fluid as you can get in a fighting style for what I've heard. Sadly, I don't know anyone that trains in it, but the Konoha library does have books on it. Naruto offered. Kaguya thought for a moment and nodded it. It couldn't hurt to give a try. All right, I'll give this Aikido a try. Though as far as you go, your basic combat stance and fighting style is just that. Too basic. I'm guessing the first style you chose you stuck with. She asked curiously, causing Naruto to hang his head in shame, as this was dead on the nail. Well, I know of a martial art called Jadarunkabart, or Muay Thai. It's a lot like your basic brawler fighting style, powerful and fast, using all of your limbs as weapons, not just your fists and feet. Also, your jutsu arsenal is way too sparse. Who is your sensei? An idiot to not teach you anything else. Kaguya said in slight annoyance that no one taught her fiancé better than this. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the Leaf Village and near hot springs, one closet pervert and self-proclaimed super pervert felt pangs of guilt after sneezing. Naruto seemed to sink even further into a depression the more she dismantled his way of fighting. He couldn't lie. She was right, but didn't mean it didn't hurt any less to hear it. Yeah, I'm about to thank them for leaving me so high and dry. Naruto trailed with an edge to his voice as he cracked his knuckles, ki filling the valley they were in. Though I've never heard of that style, do you think there are some books on it? Naruto asked curiously. Kaguya smiled at this question before summoning a comatose white Zetsu, causing Naruto to go on the defensive instantly. Before she flew through the hand seals required for the Edo Tensei, causing a coffin to rise from the ground with a language that Naruto couldn't read on the coffin lid. This is an old friend of mine who can actually teach you Muay Thai. Kaguya said simply as the white Zetsu disappeared into the coffin, and a moment later the lid of the coffin fell. Out stepped a tall, lanky, but a bit muscular man with short black hair, which was in a messy hairstyle with a tan skin tone, with a confused look on his face with white bandages around his fists. Internet cookie for anyone who figure out who this was before I tell you who it is. Kaguya, why am I here? I thought I died in the battle against Hagoromo. How are you here as well? The man said in a language that Naruto couldn't make heads or tails of even if he was speaking at a slower pace than he currently was. Naruto's eyebrows furrowed, as the only time that he had seen a man like this was when he was in Kumo, where they had more dark-skinned people than he was used to. Who is this Kaguya? Naruto asked curiously, obviously out of the loop on who her old friend was. Kaguya turned to Naruto as she spoke. This, my darling, is Japanum Yiram, or Tony Jaa as he's better known, renowned martial artist in his homeland. I met him in my travels across the world to find a way to bring an end to the bloodshed in my era. Kaguya said a bit sadly, a frown coming across her face, but it disappeared as fast as it had come across her face as she turned to Tony to speak with him as well, using his native language. Tony, this is my fiancé Naruto. He would like you to train him in the ways of Jadarunkabart. Would you mind training him for me? Kaguya asked with a soft smile, losing Naruto entirely as he didn't understand the language. Tony donned a contemplative look on his face for a few moments before nodding and looking at Naruto. We will start training tomorrow, got it? He said, confusing Naruto even further because he knew that Tony was referring to him, but still didn't understand him. Naruto looked over to Kaguya for help and for her to translate before he said anything that made him look like a blundering idiot. It seems he asked me a question, but what did he say? Naruto asked curiously as his gaze flickered back over to Tony for a moment. Kaguya sighed a bit. She was going to have to teach Naruto a dead language as well. This is going to be fun. Kaguya thought sarcastically to herself. He says you will begin your training tomorrow, and I hope you've been keeping your sleeping habit up, because Tony liked to train at the ass crack of dawn, or 4 a.m. in normal terms. Kaguya said simply, causing Naruto to face fault, even during his shinobi training, The earliest he got up was 6 a.m. Tony turned back to Kaguya after inspecting Naruto for a few moments. He seems weak-willed. Do you think he can handle the toughness of Muay Thai training? Tony asked her. Naruto couldn't help but feel he had just been insulted by the slightly taller man. All right, well, let's hope he can keep up with my ungodly Uzumaki stamina. Naruto exclaimed confidently before poking his chest with a balled fist with his thumb pointing towards his heart. Kaguya couldn't help but giggle at his sudden change from moody to exuberant in the span of less than a minute. Well, he's one of the people who helped me stop the warring era, so I'll let you be the judge of that, Kaguya said with a smile on her face at Naruto's second face fault. Naruto groaned. This was going to be just like the time when he went on the 3-year training trip with Jiraiya, training until he was sore and broken. It didn't help that his teacher was undead and technically didn't have to rest at all. All right, let's get back to home. Shikamaru and Sasuke are probably raising hell trying to figure out how a Hokage just disappears from their view. Naruto droned on. His clone had run out of chakra about an hour ago and returned his memories to him, so he knew that Sasuke and Shikamaru knew about the switch now. Kaguya nodded and opened a portal. On the other side, it showed the Hokage's office as they all stepped through the portal back into Naruto's dimension. Well, seems we will both have some explaining to do now, Kaguya said as the Umbu hopped down from the ceiling. The tips of their swords pointed at Kaguya's throat, ready to kill her, but then they saw Naruto. Tony raised an eyebrow to this sight after dropping into his Muay Thai stance, ready to take them on a moment's notice for threatening his friend before he slowly relaxed as well. Naruto waved off his Umbu guard who disappeared back into the rafters after the all-clear was given by their leader. Shikamaru, Sasuke, you can come in now. I know you're skulking right outside my door, Naruto said with a bit of an annoyed sigh as he sat behind his desk and began on working on the paperwork his clone left behind, which thankfully wasn't much. The two in question stumbled through the door over each other as they blundered their way back into the room. The first to speak was Sasuke. What were you doing leaving the village, dope? I couldn't even sense your chakra in Hai no Kuni. Where the hell did you go that quickly? Also, who is he? Sasuke asked with his usual even and cool tone to his voice, pointing his thumb towards Tony, who was standing there looking around at the room. Though as long as Naruto had known him, he could hear a bit of concern he doubted anyone else noticed. Shikamaru remained silent for the time being, but his question was the same as Sasuke's, but it was too much of a drag to ask him the same question for no reason. Naruto sighed in annoyance. He was hoping he could have put off explaining why he disappeared for now, so they wouldn't keep a closer eye on him, though it did not seem to be in the cards for him. Well, for your first question, I went to one of Kaguya's dimensions to have some alone time with my fiancée and spar along with gaining a new sensei, Naruto said simply, his eyes flickering over to Tony as to show who his new sensei was. He will be teaching me Muay Thai. Any other questions? Naruto asked, steeping his hands together intertwined as he rested his chin on his interlaced fingers with a slightly bored look on his face. Shikamaru was the one to speak up this time. Muay what? What is that? Shikamaru asked curiously. He had read every book in the library, being especially bored with no missions, but even he didn't know what it was that Naruto was talking about. Sasuke nodded at this. The more questions Naruto answered, the more questions popped up in its place. Sasuke could already feel a headache coming on. Kaguya was the one to answer this question, as she was probably the only one left alive bar Tony on the account of being technically dead that knew of the style. It's a dead form of martial arts that is derived from a country that no longer exists. It was considered one of the deadliest styles in the world during my time, Kaguya explained, causing Sasuke to sigh. Like he thought, these answers just brought more questions the more they answered their question. Sasuke's eyebrow twitched in annoyance. His best friend and self-proclaimed rival was always getting into the most odd of situations. Even as Hokage, this still didn't seem to change his charge head first into the situation attitude. You're still a dobe? You know that, right? Sasuke asked rhetorically, causing Naruto to gain a tick mark on his forehead at this comment. Naruto wanted to throw something at Sasuke for bringing back up his old nickname, but it brought back a feeling of nostalgia, so he decided against it. Yeah, and you're still a team, you know? Naruto replied with a grin on his face, causing Sasuke to gain a tick mark as well. Both of them tried to hold back their laughter, but failed, confusing literally everyone in the room as they weren't in on the inside joke between the two friends, though Sasuke was the first to recover. Well, I'd say something like, don't leave without telling anyone where you're going again. But we all know you wouldn't listen anyway. Sasuke trailed a bit annoyedly. Naruto grew a smirk on his face at this comment. You're damn right, too. Don't go telling your leader what to do, Naruto exclaimed. He knew pulling the rank card was a bit of an ass move, but he finally beat Sasuke in something they both had been trying for. So sue him if he felt rubbing it in was a little bit deserved, all things considered. Sasuke decided to let him have this little victory over him. Otherwise, they might end up tearing up the countryside with their Titan-like battles, and he didn't feel like making a bad impression after getting back to the village. All right, well, I'm going to go and handle some business. Send a toad for me, should you need me to come back quickly, Sasuke said. Opening a portal looked like a mix between Tobi's spatial distortion jutsu and Kaguya's portal, showing the Uchiha hideout as his destination, probably to finish some unfinished business. Naruto's gaze flickered over to Shikamaru, non-verbally referring the question to him, and Shikamaru seemed to get the idea, shoving his hands into his pockets and leaving the room. All right, now that is settled, Kaguya, Naruto said, gaining her attention before speaking again. Check out the library with Kuma-san and look for any books on Aikido. If they have any questions, tell them it's a request from the Hokage, Naruto simply said, and the Umbu with the mask resembling a bear appeared in front of Naruto's desk, kneeling down before standing up and moving over to Kaguya, placing a hand on her shoulder and shunching to the library. Naruto's eyes flickered over to Tony, who was looking around in amazement at where the Umbu had appeared out of seemingly thin air. Placing a hand on Tony's shoulder, he disappeared in a flash, reappearing in the Hokage's mansion guest room. Stay here, Naruto simply said, hoping that the man would at least understand that much. It wouldn't do good for an Edo Tensei to be wandering around an unknown village. It could start all kinds of panic and more paperwork. Tony just nodded, at least understanding that past their language barrier as he lay down on the queen-size futon laid out for guests, still looking in amazement as Naruto disappeared from sight again, leaving He-Man alone in the room in a foreign country. Meanwhile, back with Naruto. Naruto sighed as he sat behind his desk again, grabbing his pen and began signing off on more paperwork. Though looking at his signature, he realized it was atrocious. He never really thought about it until now. Maybe I'll get Kaguya-chan to help me improve my handwriting as well, Naruto mused with a chuckle before he did his signature jutsu, and 10 clones popped into existence as he turned around in his chair, leaving the clones to their jobs, fiddling with a long lock of his hair. Maybe I should let my hair grow out. I'll look even more like Dad, haha. Naruto thought to himself as he stared out the window, overlooking the village in all of its glory. It had been destroyed 2 times, but it bounced back better than ever, after gathering the materials he thought would be necessary to help train Kaguya to be a proficient ninja instead of a brawler like he used to be. Though he was still very apprehensive about this, as he still had no absolute confirmation that Kaguya wouldn't eventually turn on them and betray him. So if this was the case, he was making her a much more lethal opponent when they had barely survived the original encounter. Though there was a benefit if she decided to double-cross them this time. She was now human and was just as susceptible to exhaustion as he was, though he was well aware that her chakra reserves vastly dwarfed even his titanic chakra reserves. So a war of attrition was still a very weighted in Kaguya's favor, though she no longer had actually limitless chakra being alive again. Though he put these thoughts to the side as he stood in the middle of the training ground with his current sensei, Tony, standing across from him. Well, we'll keep an eye on her for now until I feel she is no longer a threat, but from what the old man told us, when she wasn't insane, she was quite caring and loving. So if she did indeed return to being sane, along with we removed the control that Madara had on her when he was used as a vessel, then I shouldn't have to worry. But for some reason, I get a feeling I shouldn't relax. Naruto thought to himself as he walked over to his sensei, who had picked up a stick and started drawing pictures in the dirt. Tony knew there was still a language barrier between the two of him, but he figured drawing was a fast way to bridge that gap. They would be able to learn bits and pieces of each other's language in the process, along with him getting his point across. So he drew a crude elephant with an arrow pointing to its nose into the dirt and drew a little stick figure of the stance he was trying to teach him, drawing an equal sign between them. After he was done this, he stood in the stance he drew, his elbow skyward with his arm perpendicular to the ground. After he thought Naruto had the basics of the stance, he assumed a defensive stance, motioning for Naruto to attack him so he could show him how to properly use it. Naruto raised a curious eyebrow at this motion for him to attack him. He had restricted himself using training seals, so he wouldn't hurt his sensei. He knew that he probably could take a fair amount of damage. Though when you could crack a small mountain in half with your attacks, there weren't many people who could tank an attack like that. Though he obliged his sensei, throwing a quick jab at Tony's chest. Much to his surprise, Tony quickly rotated the top of his torso, so his elbow quickly came to block the attack, causing a light, stinging sensation in his fist, as hitting the elbow was a painful blow to land. He was surprised how effective the block was compared to a normal block. Not only did it allow his entire torso to absorb the blow, it also made an effective retaliation method without him having to drop his defense. Tony smirked at the amazed look Naruto had on his face, along with him shaking his fist, as he knew Naruto wouldn't be expecting it to hurt him for his attack to be blocked. Though Tony threw a quick jab of his own at Naruto, expecting him to be more than capable of countering such an attack from his normal human speed. His suspicions were confirmed when Naruto effortlessly blocked the attack, though it was with his normal toad-style block, causing Tony to shake his head disapprovingly and say wrong in Thai before showing him how to do the stance again. Then, fluidly, he switched into an attack again to not give Naruto a moment to forget what he was taught that quickly, along with reinforcing in Naruto that an enemy wouldn't let him rest. Naruto growled a bit softly in annoyance, as he was still not one to like training in something new and not being able to quickly pick it up. So his eyes widened a bit in surprise, as he wasn't expecting such a quick attack. Though he adopted the new form of blocking, cringing a little at how he expected it to hurt, given how close it was to his funny bone and the fact his elbow didn't get much abuse. Though he was surprised when it was a negligible level of pain, so he donned a smirk, as the toad-style block was effective at blocking and redirecting the enemy's attack potency. But this block was defensive and offensive at the same time. That was an awesome block, Naruto exclaimed lightly, silently thinking, "Oh crap," to himself as Tony went on the offensive, only throwing jabs and punches at Naruto. Tony usually had a more relaxed type of training style, though that was for others much less proficient with fighting than Naruto. So he surmised that Naruto would easily be able to learn from a more aggressive teaching style. So as he went on the offensive, his thoughts were indeed correct, as Naruto quickly began using the block to block his punches. Though he had another idea. He had remembered seeing Naruto create an exact version of himself to do his paperwork before they came to the training field. So he quickly disengaged, stepping back a few feet, mimicking Naruto's signature jutsu, and nodded at Naruto as if asking him to do it. Naruto was curious as to why I wanted him to create some shadow clones, as he was sure Tony couldn't have been possibly aware of the ability to get the memories of clones. Though he shrugged lightly and obliged him, creating about 19 clones, which was the lowest amount he could make given his level of chakra control. Inwardly smirking at Tony's wide eyes at him, summoning so many clones. Though he cocked his head to the side, curiously as to what his sensei wanted to do with the clones. I see. He wants me to be able to see from a third-person perspective of how it's properly done. He surmised as he motioned for the clone to attack him and began blocking the attacks with expert precision. Tony smiled softly as he saw Naruto paying rapt attention to the light spar with his clone, though he snapped out a quick sidekick who was still expecting Tony to be on the defensive. Quickly dispelling the clone, he looked over to Naruto as he began drawing a couple other diagrams of a couple attacks he wanted to teach Naruto, creating his lesson plan for the day. On the other side of the same training field, Kaguya was sitting Saiza's style, sitting against the 3 logs that were embedded in Team 7's training grounds. With the book on the Aikido style of martial arts in her hand, she was surprised that a style from her time period hadn't been lost like Muay Thai had been, though she was quite pleased with Naruto's choice for her. She wasn't much of a fighter in general, as before she became insane due to the Shinju tree. She was a peaceful person, albeit a peace through force stance. Though given she came from a time that didn't understand the merits of diplomacy, it was kind of expected that it was a kill or be killed mentality, though now, in a more peaceful time compared to when she was originally alive, she would be more peaceful. Quite an excellent choice. I can still defend you while also not seriously injuring my opponent, she thought to herself as she put the book down, forming the all too familiar hand seal to create a group of 19 shadow clones. The clones looked at her a bit confused, as she had never created them before, so their existence was surprising to them. Though they already knew what she meant to do with them, grouped up in groups of 2, a clone standing across from the original, going through the katas that they had seen in the book with each other. Every time half the clones would disperse, the clones created their own sparring partners, as they may not have as massive chakra reserves as the original, but they still had enough to make the 5 Kaguya, even Naruto, jealous. Kaguya was going through the motions of the kata when suddenly her clones all stopped what they were doing and faced her, raising a curious eyebrow as to what they were doing, as she hadn't told them to do anything else except for train. Then the clones started leaking killer intent into the training field, which caught Kaguya off guard, as she wasn't expecting to get a taste of her own killing intent. She tried giving mental orders to the clone, as she had seen Naruto do before, though they didn't seem to care, causing her jaw to clench lightly, as she was unsure of what was about to happen. Though she had an idea, given how they were leaking killing intent, they were going to attack her. Her suspicions were confirmed as one jumped at her. As they got to her, she used a move she had been just training in, chopping the offending appendage before it could make contact with her, putting her hand under the chin of the clone, shoving it back harshly into the other clone, causing both clones to disperse instantly. The clones cracked their knuckles on their hands and cracked their necks. They figured the one clone attack would do literally nothing to their original. So, silently looking at each other, a few moments later, they gained the crazed look on their face akin to what she had back during the war. Without giving any notice to their attack, they all rushed at her, some of the clones jumping into the air, creating a dome of clones that began encroaching on her. Kaguya sighed softly, closing her eyes as she stood in the middle of the clones. Quickly, a truth-seeking orb began to form out of her hand, wrapping around her. Right before they were going to land on her, it finished forming. Not giving the clones a chance to retreat, continuous dispersal noises were heard throughout the training field, letting out a long breath through her pursed lips as her eyes opened, revealing a hardened look on her face as she contemplated why the clones would suddenly attack her, even though she didn't give them the order to. As she contemplated the motive behind the attack, a sudden pain went through her head, forcing her down to one knee, causing her to let out a pained scream as she clutched her head from the pain. Her face twitched from a pained expression to crazed quickly. Back with Naruto and Co. Naruto was in the middle of training with one of his clones, only to be knocked off balance a bit along with the other residents of the training field by the sudden wave of killing intent, causing all of their heads to snap in the direction of the killing intent, seeing Kaguya surrounded by all her clones that were now facing her. That's weird. Clones shouldn't have a complete mind of their own, much less the ability to have killing intent for their maker. Naruto mused to himself as he surmised it couldn't have been from Kaguya herself, as the killing came from a donut shape according to his negative emotion senses. Then the clones leapt into action, causing Naruto's eyes to widen as he donned his bijou cloak, ready to dash into the fray and try to save her. Though just as fast the clones had attacked, they had even faster been dispersed by the original, causing him to relax a little as now she was safe. Tony, being just a normal human, was forced to his knees as the killing intent became too much for him. Gritting his teeth, he was a strong-willed man who had never run from a fight before, but every nerve and atom in his body was screaming at him to get away from Kaguya. So he sighed in relief as the wave of killing intent dispersed, and he could breathe normally again, dusting off his knees as he stood on his own 2 feet again with a grimace on his face. What kind of inhuman killing intent was that? He mused to himself curiously, though his musings was quickly broken as he was forced to be flat against the ground. As a pain scream echoed across the field, followed by a much more intense wave of killing intent over them. Feeling an actual elephant was sitting on his back right now, forcing him to be unable to move. Even Naruto was forced down to one knee from the intense level of the killing intent that had washed over from him from Kaguya. Fighting back to standing again, donning his Bijou mode cloak again to quickly make it to Kaguya. Kaguya was on top of him, forcing Naruto down onto his back as right above her head was a bone spear aimed like she was trying to impale Naruto. Oh shit, she was actually just faking. Sasuke, get here fast. Naruto thought to himself as he was sure that Sasuke had not left yet. Only him and Sasuke had a fraction of a chance to win. Right as his thoughts finished, a crazed Kaguya brought the spear down at lightning speeds. Naruto's Bijou cloak formed chakra arms to block the spear, as he knew if he touched the spear directly, his body would start becoming stone from touching it. Kaguya gained a slightly annoyed look on her face as Naruto blocked her attack, as she began to bear down on the bone spear, trying to impale Naruto. Though a surprised look came across her face as she was peeled off of Naruto by his clones, forcing her arms behind her back, it taking several clones to hold her arms behind her back, forcing her down onto her face as they held a knee into her back from several clones to restrain her. Get off of me, you abominations, to the purity of chakra. She screamed in a crazed tone as she struggled against the grip of the clones who were pinning her down. She was crazy strong, but with no way to gain any distance to force her way out of the grip, she was effectively pinned down by them. Naruto sighed softly as he kept up his Bijou cloak just in case she had managed to get out of the clone's grip, crouching down so Kaguya didn't have to look up as much at him. I was really hoping this time will be different, though I suppose that I should have expected this eventually. I just didn't think it would be this quick, though I did enjoy our time together before this. Naruto trailed off a bit sadly as he took out a kunai from his pouch on his belt and spun in his finger before gripping it in a downward grip with both hands. As he steeled himself, he quickly brought it down towards Kaguya's head in order for him to not lose his resolve. Kaguya watched in slow motion as the kunai made its way to her. Inwardly, she was screaming in a crazed tone. No, 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 no. It can't end like this. I need to reclaim all the cha dash, is all she could think before everything went to black as she slumped over. In Kaguya's mindscape, Kaguya drowsily sat up with a groan and realized she was no longer in the training field, but somewhere much different, though it felt familiar to her. Though she couldn't quite place it, it felt quite comfortable to her. Almost like home, unlike the place she had on Earth, which was just a place to rest her head while she tried to bring peace to humans. Though as she looked around, the area around her looked unfamiliar to her. She felt at peace for some odd reason. Okay, what the hell am I doing here? She asked curiously to no one in general as she looked around at the barren landscape around her. As she panned around, it revealed a white as her pale skin landscape that looked like it was once lush with vegetation and foliage, but now she was surrounded by decay. The pale trees around her had long since lost their foliage and stood there barren. As she did a full 360, she saw a mirror image of herself. Though this copycat just felt wrong to her, an insane look on her face, as black as night raven hair. Hello, Kaguya. It's nice of you to finally join me, instead of avoiding me after all these centuries. The copycat said with slightly warped and cracking tone as she spoke, causing Kaguya's hair to stand on edge. Kaguya found herself stuck in place with a morbid curiosity as to what the doppelganger meant about her avoiding her for all this time. So instead of running or fighting this copycat, she decided to be indifferent for the time being, so long as the copy did. What do you mean? I see you look like me, but you can't be me. You just feel so wrong, warped, and cold. Also, where are we? She asked curiously as she panned her vision around once again in a full 360. The dark version's eyebrow twitched a little in annoyance at being dismissed so easily, but she kept her composure and sighed softly, garnering Kaguya's full attention again. You know, not too long ago, we were the same, you and I. Though, through sheer force of will, you removed me from your psyche, causing me to become an— what is the words those pitiful humans use? She mused softly and thought for a moment or two. Insane version of yourself, though I do not like that word. I am a different version of you, all the same memories, skills, and feelings you have. I just don't care for any of them. The only thing I care for is to retrieve all the chakra stolen from me. She monologues as she sits down, motioning for Kaguya to do the same. Kaguya warily does, but sits Saiza style. Not only was it her preferred sitting style, but it was a tactical advantage if she needed to get to her feet quickly. Why do I not remember you at all then? All I remember is being sealed into the moon, and then nothing but blackness until I was revived by that damned Uchiha my son manipulated. She mused, spitting out that last part as she was referring to the abomination that was a black Zetsu. As Kaguya spat out the word son, her eyes closed, causing her to miss the Dark One's eyes narrowing for a split second at her. Though right as Kaguya's gaze returned to her, she returned to her normal stoic but slightly crazed demeanor before she began to speak again. As to your first question, we are on our home world of Nazareth too. It doesn't surprise me that you don't remember our home world, as it's been a very long time since we were here last, along with the fact you suppressed any memory of having to do with our clan or world. She stated in as a matter-of-factly tone, with slight annoyance at this laced in her voice as she spoke. Kaguya narrowed her eyes lightly as she tried to search her memories for any inkling she was telling the truth, and found she ran into some kind of mental barrier, where she had supposedly sealed off the memories. So at least she wasn't lying about that. Kaguya mused to herself as she kept her eyes on the copycat, staying silent as the copy's cue to keep talking monologuing. The copycat raised a curious eyebrow to Kaguya, as she had been surprisingly silent during most of their conversations, only speaking when it was necessary. Our clan heard of your defeat, and shall be here within the next couple centuries, she said with a smirk, her crazed grin getting a little wider as Kaguya's eyes widened a bit at this revelation. I have your attention now, huh? Yes, even if you don't let me retrieve the chakra from this horrendous planet, it will be taken when you're unable to defend it against people who are as strong as you combined, she said with a smirk. Kaguya wasn't anyone to scoff at, as she was the matriarch of their clan for a reason, so the copycat decided to keep her on her toes with this statement. Kaguya didn't remember anything about her other clan members, though she had the feeling this was not good at all. So she tensed up lightly at this revelation as she began examining her other half for any trace she was lying or trying to get a rise out of her. She couldn't find any evidence she was lying, but was sure was trying to get her upset. Well, I shall defend this planet with my dying breath, as I have finally achieved the peace that I so desperately fought for. So tell them to bring it. And if you interfere, I will kill you too. She threatened her dark half with conviction in her eyes as she spoke. The dark half chuckled a little and stood up with a crazed smirk on her face as she began to fade into the background, her voice becoming disembodied. Very well. It seems our time is up here. You might want to get back out there before your mate actually kills you, she said as her voice faded like her ethereal form had faded from Kaguya's mindscape. Kaguya's eyes widened as she remembered what was happening before she ended up in this desolate place. Oh crap, how do I get out of here? Come on, think. As she didn't know where she was exactly, so she couldn't just open a portal back to the field. Though little did she know This was actually what she needed to do as the environment around her faded to white. Back with Naruto and Co. Naruto was about an inch away from Kaguya's head as he felt no more negative emotions from Kaguya, causing him to hesitate, stopping just short of the kill shot. In the real world, all of a second had passed, but in Kaguya's mindscape, they had been conversing for the better part of 30 minutes, though no one else knew of the inner battle of wills that just took place. Kaguya slowly turned her head to half look up at Naruto as she was still pinned down to the floor. So looking at Naruto sideways was the best she could do at the moment, though she could tell that everyone was tense at the moment. So she decided to break the tension. Naruto, I like it rough as much as the next girl, but wait until we get back to the bedroom. She mused with a soft blush on her face, which was further exacerbated by her fair skin as she spoke. This caused Naruto to blush a deep crimson red as he tried to steel himself to drive the kunai into her. As he wasn't sure if this was another ploy to stall for time or something, or if the Kaguya he had come to know was back. This isn't the time for jokes, Kaguya. I nearly killed you. Now are you going to tell me what the hell is going on before I regain my resolve? He spoke in a bit of a harsh tone, but his adrenaline was still pumping through his veins, as he would gladly put his village before someone he didn't have any romantic feelings for yet. Kaguya sweat dropped at this, using the relaxation of the clones from her killing intent going away to power her way back to a sitting position, televising her movements in slightly exaggerated ways to Naruto to prove she was a non-combatant at the moment, allowing the clones to keep their grip on her arms to cement home this. It seems I was only partially correct in my assumption that my insanity had left. She trailed with a sweat drop as she began to recant what happened in her mind a few moments ago to Naruto and his clones. So yeah, seems I'm partial Yandere, I think is what it's called. She mused curiously, causing her mate to sweat drop yet again at her antics, but relaxed a bit, though still remaining a bit on edge. Naruto searched her face for a few long moments to check for any sign of deceit in her face, though he could find none, twirling his kunai a couple times before depositing it back into his pouch. While I'm glad that's over, I felt like I was about to have a heart attack from how fast my heart was racing. Naruto mused to himself as he helped Kaguya back to standing before he spoke again. Well, either way, I'm just glad that's over, he said as he motioned for his clones to disperse. After all the excitement, Naruto felt almost as exhausted as he did for a full day of training. So he just wanted to get home and take a hot shower and go to sleep right now. Kaguya saw the exhaustion take over Naruto as he relaxed fully and felt bad that this probably wasn't going to be the only time that they'd have to worry about this kind of thing, though she would do her damnedest to keep it from happening and stressing him out more. Yeah, let's go home, Naruto-kun, she said softly as she dusted herself off, gently taking his hand and inwardly becoming a little sad as he flinched at her touch, though she couldn't blame him. As he relaxed at her touch, she opened a portal in front of them to their house and stepped through. Naruto relaxed a little more as they entered their home, shrugging off his weighted armor jacket onto the couch with a heavy thud. Flopping down onto the couch with a sigh, he placed his face into his left hand as it was propped up on the arm of the couch. Today has definitely been an interesting day, to say the least. Naruto mused to himself. He was caught up in his own thoughts, so he didn't see Kaguya glide over to him quite literally and sat in his lap. Kaguya had a concerned look on her face as she gently floated down into his lap. Only when her weight registered in his lap did he return his attention to her, gently cupping his face as she leaned in and gave Naruto a soft but quick kiss. I know things will be a bit tough now, given the situation with my mental state. Though I swear to you, Naruto, you won't have to worry much about it. I have a strong will, so she will not get out without a fight. If you see me struggling to remain in control, knock me out, okay? She asked softly, stroking his cheek with her thumb as he nodded in her gentle grip, causing Kaguya's concerned look to soften into her normal stoic one. Naruto sighed softly as he looked at Kaguya for a few long moments with an unreadable expression, causing Kaguya to blush softly at all the attention she was suddenly getting for Naruto. "Kaguya promised me one thing?" he asked curiously with a hint of seriousness to his voice as he spoke, causing Kaguya to angle her head to the side curiously at his sudden request for her to promise him something. "If you feel yourself going fully crazy again, give me and Naruto the seals again. We will make sure to keep you from being able to ruin the peace you had wished for that way," he stated, his tone heavy with the burden they would both carry should the time come for them to honor that promise that he was making her carry. Kaguya simply nodded at this statement. Not trusting herself to speak, she could tell that he was putting a lot of his trust in her as he asked that of her. Though she couldn't help but feel a little sad that it may come to that. She made a mental note to look for a way for her to entirely be rid of the darker side of herself as she let out a cute yawn, snuggling closer to Naruto. "I'm sleepy, Naruto. Can we sleep here? I don't want to move. I'm comfy," she said with a cute tiredness to her voice as she spoke, causing Naruto to chuckle silently and nod as he yawned too. Naruto picked Kaguya up princess style. He knew in 2 moments Kaguya could get them home, but he felt the urge to princess style carry her back to the house. A flash of golden appeared around Naruto as he activated Kaguya mode, flashing through the trees and across the rooftops like it was nothing until he reached their home. Opening the door, he sat down on the couch with Kaguya in his lap. Her head cradled against his chest. She was still awake, but fading fast. Naruto formed his signature jutsu seals. A set of clones popping into existence began to quietly clean the house and bring the couple a blanket. Before stepping outside with a smile on their faces, one going to take Tony home and dispelling themselves as to not disturb the now fast asleep new couple. Okay guys, thank you for making it this far. I had a fair bit of fun writing this chapter. It was a bit more intense than I usually write, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Though, as always, if you liked the chapter, please leave me a review, and I'll see you village side ninjas. Kurama/Biju's thoughts. Naruto normally never dreamt, much less had a nightmare, though tonight his dreams were filled with nightmares. They kept repeating one theme. Everything as far as the eye could see was desolate and lifeless, with the bodies of his friends and loved ones stretched out in front of him, as if on display for him and any others to see. "What the heck?" Naruto exclaimed out in his dream. Then a moment later, he felt a powerful killing intent behind him, though the killing intent seemed familiar. It was also different, deeply cold, and a bit crazed if Naruto had to put a name to it. Though he didn't have much time to think as the killing intent intensified, forcing him to his knees and making it hard for Naruto to breathe. The creator of the killing intent floated around to be in front of Naruto, just from the slow way they came around. You knew that they relished seeing Naruto being forced into the kneeling position. "See, is this not simpler? Is this not your rightful place?" 2. The voice boomed out, sounding so familiar yet distorted my rage and insanity that it was almost unrecognizable. The origin of the voice bent down and cupped Naruto's chin, forcing him to look up at them. "Look upon the pain that you have wrought. You should have left me sealed up. You brought this upon yourself." The now discerned voice of the insane Kaguya exclaimed, all but screaming at him, but a twisted smirk crossed her face. "Don't worry, you'll get to join them, as soon as you provide me one tiny little thing." She sneered at Naruto. Her insane side hated all humans, but she rubbed her belly to punctuate her point. Naruto's eyes widened in horror, as even someone as dense as him could figure out what she meant by that motion. It was only horror due to the fact he hadn't thought about that before. Was his Kaguya only pretending to not be hopelessly insane to get probably the most powerful child the realms had ever seen out of him? "Tell me honestly, is this what the other you wants?" he asked, completely forgetting this was his own dream. So any information gained from asking questions to another person in his dream should be taken with a grain of salt, as it was essentially him talking to himself in the form of a nightmare. Kaguya, 3, could only shrug her shoulders as this information, regardless if it was the real insane Kaguya or the nightmare version, didn't have the information to give him. "I honestly couldn't tell you, as I don't know myself. Though I can tell you one thing. that her and I are nothing alike. Do not let how you view me skew how you treat her, because her being me is the only thing I care even a little about. If you hurt her, you will be the second person I kill, right after I kill that little pink teammate of yours. I still haven't gotten her back for hitting me with a mountain on the back of my head," Kaguya said angrily as she floated closer to Naruto, slowly humming a soft song that a mother would sing to a child. Though this song was discordant, it sounded very broken and haunted in Naruto's opinion. Back in the waking world, Naruto woke with a start, sucking in a deep and fast breath as his heart rate was elevated. His senses were dialed up to 11 right now. Oh, thank Kami, that was just a nightmare. He trailed off to himself as he looked down at the now wide-awake Kaguya. She had been startled awake when his chest that she had been using as a pillow suddenly filled with air and nearly knocked her off of her comfy spot, wrapped up in a blanket with him. "Kaguya, hey, did I wake you? Sorry I had a nightmare," he said honestly, though if she asked, Naruto didn't think he had the heart to tell her about it right now, since she was in it. Kaguya's soft and supple white eyes flickered back and forth, searching Naruto's face, trying to discern what the nightmare was about without asking about it. "Want to talk about it?" she asked in a soft, concerned voice, her right hand going up and cupping his left cheek, stroking it softly with her thumb as she smiled softly, planting a soft kiss on his lips. Feeling her heart flutter a little at the kiss, her smile widened a bit. Yes, she was aware they had originally married as a way for Naruto to placate her when he thought she was still evil, while originally she had only been doing it for her own selfish means as well. I mean, she had been sealed for 1,000 years, so it was about time to play the field again. Though she could legitimately feel herself growing affection for him with each passing moment. Naruto's eyes searched her face, calmer than he was before, though he was looking for any hint of insanity in her eyes. Though his eyes widened a little when he saw something he didn't expect in her eyes. He saw the beginnings of love forming in her eyes. The way the edges of her eyes softened from their concern. Though she didn't have pupils in the conventional sense, them being a different color than the iris. He could see the muscles contract in her eyes, signaling her pupils were dilated, which was a sure physiological sign someone had true feelings for you. "No, it was just a stupid nightmare. I'm sorry for waking you, Kaguya." He trailed with a tired sigh, though he knew he wouldn't be going back to sleep for a while, rubbing his face slightly in frustration at this fact. Lemon/lime start. Kaguya saw the look in action of frustration on his face and got her own foxish grin as she came up with a devious plan. "Don't think you'll be able to go back to sleep, darling?" she asked in a soft, sweet, but still a hint of deviousness to her tone, giggling lightly as Naruto raised a curious eyebrow. Placing her finger on his lips, she leaned down to his right ear and sultrily whispered, "Let me help with that." She trailed off as she nipped at his right earlobe, letting out a soft but throaty moan into his ear, loving the feeling of the pleasant shiver it gave him. She loved making him squirm with all the pleasant things she did. Naruto bit his lip lightly. Just from those few actions she had done, he had all but forgotten about the nightmare he just had. "What sort of cute deviousness are you up to, Kaguya?" he asked curiously, causing the woman in question to giggle more and shrug, craning his neck so she could get better access to it, letting out a soft, pleased moan as she began to kiss along his neck. Whatever it was she planned, Naruto was down for it. Reaching for Kaguya's sides, he began to stroke her sides, essentially only for his hands to be pinned down. Kaguya leaned back and looked Naruto in the eyes, putting up one finger, wagging her finger back and forth, as if chiding him. You just sit back," she said in a sultry tone as she leaned back down, planting a sensual kiss along his neck. "And let me," she trailed again, a bit throatier than before as she planted another kiss on his neck. "Do all the work," she said finally as she nipped at the sensitive skin around his collarbone. Pursing her lips, she pressed it against his skin and left a hickey on his collar. Naruto let out a pleasant sound every time Kaguya's lips pressed against his neck, biting his bottom lip softly as Kaguya left a hickey. Though she had told him to let her do all the work, he was having a hard time resisting the urge to flip her over and return her kindness. Kaguya, he throatily moaned out, sitting up as Kaguya began to take off his shirt, their eyes meeting as he looked up, their eyes burning with a bit of passion, signaling things were really about to heat up. Not wasting another moment, Naruto stole Kaguya's lips in a passionate, deep kiss. Naruto was a dominant man, so he wrapped his arms around her and pulled her close, leaving no space between their bodies as their kiss heated up. Kaguya let out a pleased mewl as he pulled her closer. She loved a territorial man, as it proved to the submissive side of her that she was his. Breaking the kiss deadlock for a moment, Kaguya nipped at his bottom lip, gently tugging on it as she did. Feeling the immediate reaction it got from Naruto, she smirked lightly. Though this was only the beginning, she began by kissing the side of his mouth, trailing down his chin until she got to the tip of his chin. Then she started kissing along his throat, down his muscular chest, which Kaguya was very pleased with. She continued kissing down to his navel before she stopped and looked up at Naruto. "Close your eyes," she said in a seductive tone to her voice. Once Naruto did, there was a moment of silence while Kaguya tied up her hair, making a mental note to go to the barber's and get some of the extreme length cut off. Naruto was curious as to what she was planning, but he had an idea since there was a pause before Kaguya started pulling his pants off. "Oh God, why does having my eyes closed make it so much hotter?" he thought to himself, picking up both of his feet so Kaguya could take off his pants and underwear completely. His suspicions were confirmed when he felt the warm, wet sensation of Kaguya's mouth wrapping around the tip of his cock. Letting out a soft but throaty moan, he leaned his head back onto the couch as he sat back and relaxed, letting Kaguya work her magic on his cock. Kaguya smirked internally as she listened to the lovely sounds she was causing Naruto to make. Slowly, she began to take more of him into her mouth, though she was thankful for her race not having a uvula, hence no gag reflex, and could thrive in space, so she didn't need air, which was a blessing in her opinion, because Naruto had a pretty sizable cock. She was undeterred, though. She promised she would make him feel good. As these thoughts were ruminating in her head, she began a steady bobbing pace, spurred on by the lovely sounds that were coming out of Naruto's mouth as she serviced him. Naruto bit his bottom lip as the pleasure was feeling great for him, though he was done with inaction. In a quick motion, he picked up Kaguya and laid them both down on the couch, never taking his cock out of her mouth. Smirking at the surprised giggle that Kaguya let out at his sudden change of position, he spun her around to where her crotch was level with his face, pulling her panties off and tossing them to the side. He took a moment to marvel at how perfect her pussy was shaped before digging into his meal. As he did, he inwardly smirked as he felt Kaguya moaning around his cock as he began lapping up her juices. Kaguya was surprised at just how strong he was. He was able to move her around like she weighed absolutely nothing. Though this was great in her opinion, as it proved to her that Naruto could handle her in the way she wanted. "Oh God, I was just going to make him come so we could go back to sleep, but I will never say no to this," she thought to herself as she picked up the pace of her bobbing, redoubling her efforts to make him come first. Naruto was on the same wavelength of making his partner come first, so it became a sort of unspoken race between the two to make them come fastest. Though Naruto let out a loud moan as she buried his cock all the way down in her throat. His toes curled a little as he didn't even know that was humanly possible. Then again, she isn't human, so that may be easy. He trailed off as Kaguya began gulping while he was buried in her throat, simulating a vagina undulating around his member, causing his toes to curl in pleasure as he moaned. Kaguya smirked as she saw his toes curl at what she was doing. She was going to spoil him in ways that only she could, though she slid him out of her mouth for a moment to speak with him. Throwing her hair over her shoulder, she looked back with a smirk. "So, quick little tip, my race doesn't need to breathe for a long time. So let's just say, have fun," she said with a giggle before she slid his cock back down her throat, curious if he got the hint. Naruto's eyes widened a little bit as his horny, clouded brain tried to parse what she meant by that. Then he realized what she meant. He began lightly thrusting his hips upwards as Kaguya stayed where she was, still gulping to provide even more pleasure for him. "Oh God, Kaguya!" He moaned out as he began to pick up the pace of eating his meal, taking 2 fingers and sliding them in and out of her to try and make her come first. Kaguya moaned louder as she felt his fingers sliding into her, bucking her hips into his hand and mouth as she writhed in pleasure. She could feel her orgasm building a lot faster than she anticipated, though she could tell Naruto wasn't faring much better if the heavy breathing and reactions his cock was having were any indicator. "Gotta think of something fast, or I may very well lose," she thought to herself before an idea came to her. Sliding her hand down, she gently began to rub his balls, loving the sounds that came from her lover. Naruto bit his bottom lip for a moment at her actions. He could feel his balls swelling up like they always do not too long before he comes. Though he willed himself to last longer as he picked up the pace of his ministrations on Kaguya, listening to her moans to figure out what worked best on her. "Hey Kurama, got any ideas on how to win this?" he internally mused. Kurama let out a big yawn as he cracked open a huge, slitted eye as he peeked through Naruto's eyes to see what was going on. Though as he did, even the millennia-old fox couldn't do anything but blush. "You humans and your mating rituals. Send some wind chakra to your tongue to cause it to vibrate. Make sure to not add too much or you will end up hurting your mate," Kurama said sagely as he went back to sleep. Naruto smirked inwardly at Kurama's advice. He did exactly as he was told, eliciting a loud and pleasurable moan from Kaguya. He could tell she was close by the way she was now grinding on his face, though this didn't stop him. Picking up the pace to max, he could feel his orgasm probably wouldn't be too long after hers. Then she came and came hard, essentially vice gripping his fingers in place as she rode out her orgasm. Kaguya was distracted from what she was doing by the powerful orgasm Naruto had just given her. Though after she started coming down, she picked up where she left off. Thankfully, she didn't have to do much, as Naruto was still thrusting the entire time. She felt him grow bigger in her mouth. Knowing this was it, she buried him all the way down again with her nose flush against his balls. She coaxed all she could out of them. Once Naruto's cock stopped twitching, she slowly slid her mouth off his cock, sucking out all she could. "Fuck Naruto, that was amazing. Feeling better now?" she asked half dreamily, half sleepily, though she let out a pleasant surprised yelp as Naruto gently rolled her over and picked her up princess style, carrying her to the bedroom. Naruto had his signature foxish grin on, an albeit sleepy one, but he nodded at her question as he gently lay her on her side of the bed. "Much better, and I think I can actually get back to sleep now," he admitted honestly as he stripped her shirt off of her, climbing into the bed and laying flat on the bed. After he did, Kaguya pushed his arm up and laid her head on his chest, her bare body flush against his with a smile on both of their faces. They drifted off. The next morning, Kaguya was the first to wake up as a beam of light hit her face, causing her to stir and make a sound of mild annoyance at the fact she was being woken up while she was warm and comfy. That was a very restful sleep, but I don't want to leave Naruto's warm embrace, she mused to herself honestly. Then her stomach growled lightly, which was her signal to get her butt up. Sighing softly, Kaguya peeled herself from his embrace, heading to the kitchen to make them both some breakfast, humming softly as she noticed that she was only in one of Naruto's shirts. So she opened a portal to the other side of the room in order to get to the window and close it as his shirt was just barely covering her butt. Though she decided to cook okonomiyaki for the two of them. "I hope Naruto likes this. It's been a long while since I've made these," she thought to herself, deciding to make Naruto breakfast in bed since he had been training so hard recently. She began humming a tune as she cooked. She had long since stopped floating, though it looked like she was floating around the kitchen with how she glided effortlessly throughout. Once it was finished, she set up 2 plates on a tray, some orange juice, and headed back to the room. "Dana, 3. Breakfast is ready," she said softly as she used her, but to push the door open and not risk dropping it. Naruto groaned lightly at someone calling out to him to wake him up. It took his brain a few seconds to process that it was Kaguya, though it registered in his mind that she had called him Dana. So he sat up groggily and smelled the delicious food, and his stomach growled at the prospect of a home-cooked meal. "Thank you, Kaguya-chan. It looks delicious," he said with a low rumble to his voice as he had just woken up. As Kaguya sat down, he leaned over and planted a soft but affectionate kiss on her lips, smiling in the middle of the kiss. He felt his heart skip a beat as he kissed her. A spark had traveled down his spine as well. His eyebrows furrowed as he contemplated what this could mean. As much as he claimed he loved Sakura when he was younger, he didn't truly know what it meant. He had just latched onto the first person to show him any kind of kindness that he didn't see as a parental figure. Though after a fair bit of contemplation, he finally figured out what it meant. "I think I'm falling for you, Kaguya," he admitted honestly, looking her in the eyes as he did. Kaguya's eyes widened a considerable margin when he said that she had been thinking about the fact that she basically held his head down with a shotgun and made him marry her, which is why she was trying to make this as pleasant of an experience as possible, though she had started to develop a bit of feelings for him too. She never thought he would return them. "I'm ecstatic to hear that, Naruto. I've been slowly falling for you for a while, ever since you actually started treating me like I wasn't just an enemy alien," she said honestly, smiling as she did. The smile even reached her eyes as they beamed the affection she had for the knucklehead ninja that had suddenly found his way into her heart. She could tell at first that he was just faking it, hoping she didn't snap. She could tell from the tone of his voice and how his eyes were locked with hers at the moment. It was the truth. Naruto was a bit surprised by this. He figured it was a strong possibility that she would fall for him, as he seemed to have an inexplicable charm with the ladies he couldn't quite understand. He honestly wished he could control it at several points, though he had the most powerful woman in existence as his wife. So he wasn't going to complain about her truly developing feelings for him. Plus, she was a lot of fun in the bedroom. "Thank you, Kaguya-chan." He trailed softly. Kaguya furrowed her eyebrows, lightly in confusion as to what he was thanking her for. "Thank you for being truly here for and fully present in our marriage. Yes, it may have all been an act at first, but I have come to appreciate your company, Kaguya-chan," he said honestly as he took her hand in his and gave it a gentle yet affectionate squeeze before he took a bite of his food and let out a pleased sound. Kaguya smiled at the pleased sound Naruto made as he took his first bite of the food that she made. Yes, they had been together for about a week now, though they rarely had any time to spend together to enjoy their meals together. Though Kaguya frowned as she felt a presence outside the apartment. Judging by the high chakra levels, it was easily one of the Umbu security details for the Hokage. "I know you're waiting at the door. If you're going to come in, come in," she called out over the shoulder in mild annoyance that their good and romantic atmosphere had been broken by Naruto's duties. The Umbu didn't bother knocking since he was hailed into the apartment and went straight to where the voice came from. "Hokage-sama, Kage-san, I'm sorry for the intrusion, but the civilian council is asking for your presence in the Hokage's office," he said, trying to keep any emotion out of his voice. Because though they were just speculation and rumors, the word around the training yard was that Kaguya was the perpetrator behind the Tsuki no Mai. For, though they wouldn't dare speak badly about the Hokage's wife, especially since it was mere speculation and only the Hokage and his team knew what truly happened after they all fell under the Jinjutsu, as this was still a dictatorship, and he could have them executed if he so wished. The civilian council and his council was merely for show. Naruto let out a mild sound of annoyance as he adjusted the covers on the blanket to make sure he was decent before he looked at the Umbu operative. "I will be there in a bit. Please tell the civilian council that they cannot demand my presence at any point in time just because they want to," he said with slight annoyance as he continued to eat his food. He glanced at the position of the sun outside the window and face faulted. What could they possibly want at 6 a.m.? He asked curiously and in mild annoyance. The Umbu didn't respond for a moment as he figured out how he should broach the subject before deciding to just rip the Band-Aid off. They want to know when the next Kage summit will be, because after the fight with Madara and Obito, it has brought peace to the forefront of everyone's minds, as they realized all their petty squabbles in the past have amounted to nothing. They're mostly just happy that they still have their free will thanks to you and the new Densetsu no Sannin. 5. He said honestly as he saluted Naruto before disappearing in a swirl of leaves, leaving the two loved birds in peace once again. Kaguya raised a curious eyebrow to what the Umbu said about Naruto and his team, though when she thought about it. As far as the Umbu knew, they had defeated Madara in fair combat. While it was better that it stayed that way, Kaguya knew all too well what happened when the people found an enemy to rally behind. Sounds fairly mundane. It sounds like they just want to give you their thanks in person since you've been sending a clone to work every day. She mused with a small giggle at his easy way to get out of the job. It wasn't like he was skipping out on being their leader. Once the clone poofed, Naruto still got all the memories from the clone, so it was just as good as him being there. Though Kaguya's eyebrows furrowed a bit as she thought about this. Naruto had told her it was his dream to be Hokage, so it finally clicked in her head that it was a bit odd he was here all the time. Naruto, be completely honest with me. I believe you when you say that you have feelings for me. I can read chakra flows to detect if someone is lying or not. Though are you here with me because you want to be, or that you feel like you need to be? She asked honestly with a bit of edge to her tone, as this was a sensitive topic. Naruto was caught off guard by the question, but he had figured it was coming at some point due to their unusual marriage. Though deciding to be tactful for once in his life, he simply nodded for speaking. At first I was just doing it because I felt I had to, because I'm one of only 3 people who could even hope of standing toe-to-toe with you if you ever decided to keep up with the attack. He admitted honestly, pausing for a moment as he gave her hand a gentle but firm squeeze as he held her gaze. Though, as I've gotten to know you more and more, I just want to be around you, to learn more about you. You're an untapped wealth of knowledge from an era that has barely any surviving records of. There is so much I could learn from you. He continued as he took a moment to catch his breath before restarting. I want to be around you, Kaguya-chan, not only to learn from you, but because you know I have feelings for you. That, and he trails off with a bright red blush. Kaguya could infer what Naruto was trying to say, though she wanted to tease him a bit, just because she could. What was that, Naruto? I missed part of that. She teased lightly, with a playful grin on her face. This caused Naruto to blush an even deeper shade of red, to the point metaphorical steam was coming out of his ears. You can tell me anything, Naruto. I've heard you sleep-talking before. I'm sure it couldn't be any more embarrassing than that, she said, distracting him from his previous embarrassment. Naruto was curious as to what she had heard while he was sleeping, though it wasn't the time for that. He stuck his tongue out at her teasing before he gathered up the mental energy to repeat what he trailed off with. Though as soon as he was about to speak, Kaguya began poking his side gently while asking him what he said in a teasing tone. He could tell it was playful banter, though he tried his best not to smile as she did it, turning his head so she couldn't see his smile. I'd stop poking me if I were you, he warned playfully, turning back to her, not hiding his smile this time. Though she kept poking his sides until he finally decided enough was enough, with speed that would even give Sharingan a run for its money. Naruto gently grabbed both of her hands, spinning her around and gently pulling her arms across her chest, pinning them down lightly to her side. Aha, I won! Naruto exclaimed lightly with his signature foxish grin on his face. Kaguya was caught a bit off guard by how fast he had disarmed her, though she was flexible, pushing her arms and his arms above their heads. She flipped over him and put him in the same position that he had just put her in. No, I win, she exclaimed lightly with a giggle. Though Naruto surprised her, yet again, he quickly powered out of her grip, gently grabbing her wrists as he spun around and pinned her down to the bed with her hands above her head. Well, that backfired quickly. She trailed jokingly as she tried to sit up to continue their play fight, flailing her legs cutely as Naruto straddled her waist to make sure he held her down. Shouldn't I be the one riding you? She asked in a sly tone, biting her bottom lip in an attempt to distract him from his grip on her wrists. It worked, but only for a moment, though that was all that Kaguya needed. Soon Naruto felt her hands on his sides. Then all of a sudden he was on his back instead of her being on her back. Well then, not many people can beat me in a wrestling match, he mused with a chuckle as he got his breathing back under control after their play wrestling match. Though as much as I'd like to continue our fun little game, I'm needed in my office as I haven't sent a clone yet, and it's occasionally nice of me if I show up. He said honestly, feeling a bit bad as this caused Kaguya to lightly pout, though she still got off of Naruto. Kaguya playfully glared at the blonde and said with a half-teasing, half-serious tone to her voice, "You better bring me some flowers on the way home." She lightly exclaimed as Naruto got out of the bed and started getting dressed. Grabbing his Rokudame Hokage cloak and hat, Kaguya had to admit he looked damn good in it. Naruto let out a light chuckle before coming back over to the bed for one last affectionate kiss before he left. "Tell you what, if you bring me lunch, then we'll go out and pick you flowers together," he said honestly as he put the hat on. Though before giving Kaguya a chance to respond, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves to his office, making it all but assured that Kaguya would come rescue him from the hell that is paperwork. Author's notes / translations or elaborations. 1. See you next time, Space Cowboy. Anyone know where this is from? I will be so sad if no one knows without Googling LOL. 2C. Is this not simpler? Is this not your rightful place? A nod to the first Avengers movie when Loki in Germany made a bunch of people kneel to him. 3. I've decided to go the split personality route to explain that she is no longer crazy. She was trapped in a moon for so long. That was the only way to keep her from becoming a babbling lunatic. 4. Suki no Mai, aka the moon's Jinjutsu. 5. Naruto and all of Team 7 is widely considered to be the new 3 legendary Sannin by most fans and by Kishimoto himself. Reviews. Easy Screed 29, Chapter 1. May 31st, 2022. Ito. Talk no Jutsu was also used on Nagato, Obito, and Gaara to an extent. Me. I'm not quite sure why you brought this up, as I went over the chapter again to see if maybe I said something out of pocket about it being only used in that battle, though I don't see anything indicating as such. Etro Champion Chapter 1. October 8th, 2021. Story of promise, but I kind of don't like you making modern world reference in Brazil and soccer really. But outside of that, the story has potential, don't get me wrong, I just hope you can make it longer than 5 chapters. Me. I understand where you're coming from, though they're not meant to be taken seriously, or as in the world hints that our worlds are the same. Simply as jokes to make soccer fans laugh, lol. Pikachu 45, Chapter 1. February 20th, 2021. More chapters, please. Me. With pleasure. Here you go. Smiley face. Guest Chapter 1. October 23rd, 2020. Brock, can you stop saying he will make a fine mate? Ruined it for me. By the way, why the hell did you bash Sasuke for? I swear these bashers in fanfiction are really stupid, dumb, idiotic 5-year-olds. Seriously, why you gotta hate bruv? 1 second Sasuke is good, and then another, oh sorry guys, I don't like Sasuke and bash him, TF author? Are you a fucking retard? Are you bipolar? Fuck off, man, I was having fun at first too. God, why ain't there good Naruto fanfics? Me. Because I want to, and it's my fanfiction, don't like it? Stop reading it. It takes literally no effort to click off of my fanfiction. This is my creation and my universe. As I've said before, at the end of the day, I'm writing these because I love to write. I'm not doing it specifically to please any fans. If a fan likes it, that's awesome. If not, oh well, no skin off my teeth, and clearly I'm not, because I have 13 stories that in general are liked by the fans. While you're over here bitching about my opinion on a character that may or may not be true, you'll never know if this is truly how I feel about the character, or if it was simply how I felt the characters should truly feel about the character. Now, if you're done acting like a 5-year-old, go find something better to do with your life. Rice with Chestnuts Chapter 1. August 24th, 2020. What happened? Why is this stop at Chapter 5? This is intriguing and new. Please update. LOL. BTW, I know this completely unrelated, but what comic does that come from? The cover of this Fics? Huh. Me. I'll tell you exactly what happened in one word. Depression. I suffer from chronic depression where there are months where I'll try to write another chapter because I know my fans want them. Though it will just be an uphill fight, there are plenty of documents in my Google Docs that are half completed due to depression. As far as your question about the picture goes, I honestly couldn't tell you where I originally found it. It was probably just the first Naruto not fighting Kaguya picture I could find on Google. Here's a link to a Reddit post that contains it. 2. Decent Kaguya raises Naruto stories. Request: Naruto fanfiction. Guest Chapter 1. Juli 11, 2020. Wow. You go Naruto. Show that despite Sasuke trying to kill him, take everything from him, and is still a criminal, the power of friendship prevails. Instead of calling it talk no jutsu, let's call it suck cock no jutsu. Naruto would blow dick and forgive anybody. The fucking retard would probably Hitler if it meant satisfying his bullshit. Somebody kill this dumb fuck. We don't need more of that ching chong sucky shit coming from his fag ass. Me. You're a special type of retarded, right? I never once claimed that Naruto liked him during it all. Hell, I even point blank said that Naruto hated him until he had a change of heart. Though apparently you can't read too well with that pity dick in your mouth because 1, Japanese, not Chinese dipshit. 2, get a life, get a girlfriend, get laid, or something because clearly you have nothing better to do with your life. Guest Chapter 1. Juni 12, 2002. Why did you make Naruto, say, ready to lose like Brazil lost to Germany? He is in the elemental nations, why did you make him break the fourth wall? It immediately turned me off from the story, not to mention all of the unnecessary bold text/speech. Me. To make people laugh who get the joke.